Hello, and welcome to another debate dissection. I am joined by my wonderful friend, your wonderful friend, Better Than Ember. How
Woo.
are you, Ember?
Well. I'm feeling a little better. I still got my handy
Good.
dandy medicine. My car had a bad day though. My front brakes both failed, so now I got to wait till Monday
Oh,
for the
wow.
mechanic shops to open.
That's bad. Wow.
Adventures.
Um, but yeah. I hope that wasn't a surprise to you in the middle of driving, I guess. That could be bad. That's really bad. I've had to do an emergency handbrake thing myself at one point, and it is like scary, like it's weird to be in control and then just have no control over your car. That's
Yeah. Well, the
horrible.
good news is I still have the rear brake, so it's just very, very
Okay.
slow stopping.
Yeah, be careful. Mine, it
Yeah.
was like total brake failure kind of thing, and I had to do this was years and years and years ago in the old cars kind of thing, and I had to do an emergency handbrake stop, which is terrifying,
Mm,
So if the
yeah.
brakes fail, all you can really do is it was a manual, so I could pull up the clutch to
Oh,
slow
nice.
it down using the gears to slow it, and you put on the handbrake and you cross your fingers. Yeah,
Yep.
pretty scary.
Gravity assisted stopping. Need an uphill to slow you
Yeah,
down. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah. So I've been a bit all over the place. I've been a bit. I've done a couple of debates on Muslims. With Muslims. So I filled in for Matt Delahunty. I debated Hussein, which was a great debate. I think that got a
Hmm.
bit spicy, and I really liked what I did in that one. I enjoyed it immensely. There are a couple of things I could have done better and addressed. But yeah, overall, I think it was really, really good. So I was very happy with that one. And I was very
Hmm.
happy with look, Issa, the original guy, he's such a nice guy. He's a really nice guy, but
Seems to
I
be, yeah.
don't think yeah, well, I don't think he's reflective of his religion, to be honest with you. I think he believes in a lot of stuff that doesn't mesh with what a lot of Muslims would say. But yeah, what have you
Well,
been up to lately?
he's Sufi, isn't he?
I think so. He mentioned Sufism. It's probably something I should have asked, but I did not ask if he was actually a Sufi or he was just mentioning that that is one sect of Islam. But as far as I understand it, it's a very minor sect within Islam. Like it is not the sort of mainstream Islamic belief, Sufism.
Right. They're very, very far off into heresy land.
Right. Well, I'm not sure if they're that far because they're sort of still considered Islamic people. They're just sort of not, if you'd say, hey, it would be like saying a Quaker or something would be representative of Christianity, and it's like, well, no, there's not, or a Calvinist would be representative of Christianity. It's a very, very small sect within
Yeah.
Christianity. It's not huge. Um, yeah. So, what have you been up to lately?
Working, editing when I'm not working, or
Yeah.
actually today after the breaks thing cut my work short today, I was trying
Mm.
to get stuff set for another big live stream show thing. And you know, maybe I'll get it done. It might be interesting. I'm aiming for a bunch of small short stuff. I'm hoping for Wednesday, but I may do Tuesday just because there's other stuff
Right.
happening Wednesday. We'll see.
Okay. Okay. Well, I must admit, I've been sort of tossing up whether I should upload some stuff, and yeah, I've found um I think the Big Bad Mamas in the audience. It's weird. I did this thing in Stephen Boland's channel, sort of Proverbs guy, and they were really, really nice to me. And I still have one to upload from that series that I did on them. Um, I that they were hassling me for my accent kind of thing, and it's like, how are you so nice to my face, but like hassling my accent of all things behind my? It was just weird, like just very, very strange. Um, there's no hate like Christian love, really. It's hilarious. Um, if you do slow, thank you so much, Azo. No, I look. I wish I needed slow mode. Let's face it. You know, like if I'm ever at the point I need slow mode, I'm doing a lot better than I thought I would, quite frankly. So, I don't think that's happening anytime soon, mate. But thank you so much for your support and the 4 months that you're up there. Thank you so much, mate. That's
Oh,
yeah.
you know what? You know what? I don't know why that cheer keeps hanging up, but yay, cheers for Az.
Cheers for Az. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, it's spooky. And Sydney Raptor, good to see you. Big Bad Mama, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Jeff, Archangel Gabriel told you to come here. Did he set a date for the rapture? Maybe did that happen too? Could we get an update on that one? Because that's yeah, it's funny. I've been looking into a bit of that, and sort of the funny thing is that a lot of the time they're sort of saying, "Hey, this will happen," and people with swords and shields will be fighting, and it's like, will they though? Like, it's just,
you know, if one of those big solar flares does knock out our power grid, that may happen.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I've got a funny feeling that people will do other stuff to get around that. We're very, very creative. But
Probably.
I mean, I don't see guns relying on electronics, so I don't think that would happen.
No, yeah, you'd need to run out of ammo before you start thinking.
Right,
And even then,
right.
there's more pitchforks than swords. So I don't know. I mean, I have a bunch of swords, but I'm also a crazy person.
Well, yeah. I've got one very badly made katana, and that's about it. So because I just like it. But yeah, I unless yeah. What kind of dystopian like Mad Max future are we going to where the apocalypse is fought with swords? But anyway, I find that funny. Anyway, today we've got the Hitch again with D'Souza. Hitchens, and I sort of I only vaguely remember seeing this one. I saw it ages and ages ago, so forgive me if I don't remember anything about it. But it was sort of at the real height of his hitch slapping days, kind of thing. So,
nice.
And Dinesh D'Souza is a very capable debate opponent. Very capable. He talks well. His rhetoric is good. I don't think he has good information, and he's sort of I don't know. I see him as kind of a bit slimy, to be honest with you. He's a bit his arguments are sort of not that well formed. But you know, I think Hitch is a really good debater, but his arguments have cracks in them as well. So, but you know, for rhetoric and presentation, Christopher Hitchens is second to none. And you know, I wish I could use my English accent to be more like Hitch.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if he's gonna be all slimy on us, I'll put up my my windscreen here so that because I don't have a poncho handy.
Yeah, D'Souza did get trounced by Delahunty. I should do that one at some point as well, because that was a thing. I'd love to do also the interview that Matt Delahunty did with Jordan Peterson. I would love to do that as well, because that was fascinating, just how little Jordan Peterson said and how much Matt said, like in this roughly the same amount of time speaking.
And Peterson won't talk to him. He won't do an event with him again because Matt made him look so bad.
Yeah. It's hilarious because he didn't say anything. Yeah, aren't you? One of my debates, I was accused of my English accent, just trying to sound smart, kind of thing, and it's just it was a dumpster fire. If you don't like dumpster fires, don't go near that one. But how you feeling? Do you feel like starting off and let's go and see how far we can get through this?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Professor. Very generous introduction. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My first duty, which is also a pleasure.
Is that too soft?
He's awful quiet.
Let me do my volume mixer and still soft.
I blame StreamYard.
Oh yeah.
Thank the University of Notre Dame for inviting me onto its terrain.
How's that?
That's way soft.
Oh, okay. I'm giving it all she can go, Captain.
Let's see. I know StreamYard usually has like an automatic volume adjust thing. I'm not sure exactly where it is in settings, but if there's a way to override that, that might be a way to go.
Yeah, I think it's got an automatic thing for your microphone, but I don't think it's got that for like playback kind of thing.
And Mr. Duffy in particular, in an institution that's also identified.
I think it's got up as far as it can go. Give me 1 second. Let's boost that. Yeah, my volume's at like 100%. Like you're probably going to say something loudly and blow my ears out now. That's the best I can do. It must have sort of copied in very, very.
Great history people of Ireland for taking the revenge of arranging for English weather to greet me. Now,
Can you hear that, or is it still too soft?
I can barely hear it.
There's a proposition.
Really? Wow. Let's see. Audio.
Pesky technology.
Maybe if I turn off that.
When Gertrude Stein was dying, some of you will know this story, she asked, as her last hour approached, well, what is the answer?
Is that the same?
It's slightly better.
Slightly better. Oh, man. And let me go to the original. Maybe it's the program I'm using. Let me close it. Sorry about this, folks. I really apologize. This I put this together this morning, so maybe it is the program I am using it with.
It seems the original is also very, very quiet.
Oh, okay. I tell you what, if you can wait on a bit, I can boost the sound by putting it through shortcut at the end.
I wonder why they did that.
I don't know. I mean, put the gain up a bit.
And it looks like there's only the one copy of that debate from
Yeah,
the original host.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was so thingy though.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, please stand by. Please stand by. If you've got some kind of graphic to to run while you have technical difficulties, I should have that, shouldn't I?
I can do fireworks.
Oh yeah, all right. That sounds good. Please stand. We need a please stand by screen. Yeah, this might take a little bit. Nice. And Happy New Year, everybody, apparently.
Yay! Actually, this was 4th of July fireworks. Because that's That's our big blow shit up holiday around these parts.
Try turning it off and on again. Look, Armchair, you're giving me flashbacks to my tech support days. Just stop. Just stop. Like, seriously. This shoddy work would never happen on Ember's stream. How dare you? You're lucky if Ember turns up for his own stream on time. How dare you? That's so. Oh wow, spooky, spooky. You hurt my soul just then. You hurt my soul. Yeah, I do apologize. No, this is totally my fault. I'm stuck in this temporal thing where I think that it's yesterday. Or like I've been like this for the last few days, that I've been like, oh yeah, it's definitely sort of, Saturday today is what I thought this morning, and yesterday I thought it was Friday. I don't know what has what's semi. Oh yeah, definitely PEBCAC, mate. Does everyone know what PEBCAC is?
Yep.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, it's a tech support term. It means problem exists between keyboard and chair. So it's basically, user error, essentially.
I don't know. I gotta blame Notre Dame, because they uploaded the original with such. Like, if you have to turn your volume up to 100 to hear that, you get a ding, a message comes in, and you're freaking deaf. Like, that's not cool.
Yeah.
When you upload a video, it has to be in the audible range for human hearing,
Yeah. So, I can blame their tech support department, not mine. But really, I should have checked it before I did it. We need to review a Mark Reed debate with Mark in the side chat. No, I'm not sure I can handle that kind of scrutiny as her. I'm not sure I can. No, that would be fine. That would be fine. Actually, just before coming here, we were watching Matt and Issa debating kind of thing, and that one's a fascinating one because I debated him the other day, and he's a lovely guy, but I don't know why he needs Islam so much. Like, it just seems to be like he seems to agree with most things in humanism. He just lacks his God. I just don't. Yeah. So are you still down to drop in tomorrow? The Kentucky Atheist.
Yeah, KA is doing a 500 subscriber stream at 2 p.m. Eastern, right, KA?
Oh, that's really bad for me.
I know, 2 a.m. for you.
Yeah, I like you, KA. I'm not sure I like you that much, buddy. I'm really sorry. But let me get you a link. So if you do want a, there we go. There's a Kentucky Atheist for you. So drop to Kentucky. What's Kentucky like anyway? I've got no idea what Kentucky is even like.
It's like Tennessee, but with a few more mountains and an extra arc.
Well, I don't know what Tennessee's like, so that isn't useful for me. Oh man, it was funny. James from Modern Day Debate was going through, and I went, "Oh, hi James, it's good to see you," because he hadn't been on the show for a while, and he's like, "Oh, good to see you, Mark. Yeet," and I'm like,
"You said that to Coffee Mom too."
Yeah, and like I said to Ryan, like, I think you should tell James what yeet means at some point, because yeet means to boot somebody. If you yeet them, like, it means to throw them out. And
I think he's waiting for someone to say, "You keep saying that word. I don't think it means what you think it means."
Right. Right, but like, don't get me wrong, James. He's not meaning it like that. He probably is sort of saying "woot" kind of thing, like, like, or yay kind of stuff. I know what he means, but it's just the wrong word for it,
Yeah, I think he's like ironically making fun of Zoomer speak.
Oh no, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I don't think he's like that. He doesn't do that a lot, like he's not really like that. How much am I through the thing? What's it? I'm only at 42%. I'm so sorry. This is professional work, everybody. This is professionalism at its best.
Hey, we're doing it live. We're
doing it. We'll do it live.
Yeah, we're fixing the video live. I think that's the link to the actual live stream. If I did it right, maybe I suck at things too.
Let's see. I don't. Oh, there. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Cool. So yeah, get in there for Kentucky Atheist talking to our very own Asho. Who is a scholar and a saint. What am I saying? That's ridiculous. I almost got through that, like,
Almost. I don't know. I've seen some of the saints, like Mother Teresa. I don't think anybody would want to be identified with the saints.
Yeah, that's weird. Mother Teresa was contentious. I know that Hitchens, who is debating that we're going to review, he hated Mother Teresa. He traveled quite widely as a journalist, especially through India and Bangladesh and all of these countries, and he kind of really loathed her particular ideology on the sanctity of suffering kind of thing, how suffering was holy. And he thought that she needlessly let people suffer because it made them more pure and holy. And I think that's disgusting as well. There is reports of her denying pain-killing medicine to people in palliative care because that pain she thought made them more holy. And that is horror. That's horrible. That's horrible. That's completely needless.
And the lying on top of that, the whole raising funds to take care of people and then not using it for that and sending it to the Vatican.
It went to the church, to the Vatican, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of and I mean, Matt was talking about how he donates to religious causes sometimes if they're in line with what he wants, kind of thing, and people were surprised at that. They're like, oh, really? And that meshes up with everything, all of the studies I've read about that, because religious people are more generous according to the studies. Like, there's no doubt about that, right? That as far as giving to charity, religious people are more generous. But here's where it gets interesting. They're more generous as long as those people are within their own circle. So where, their own religion, their own people they know, or, sort of their own, who they consider theirs. Atheists are actually more generous outside of their circle of us, kind of thing. So they're more generous to religious people than religious people are to them. And so, Matt saying, hey, yeah, I'll give to religious organizations if they're doing good things. It's like, yeah, that completely falls in line with what we know about atheists. Because religious people generally make great strides to take care of their people, or people that are willing to pray with them, or people that are willing to, say they believe in Jesus for a sandwich, kind of thing. But the atheists are more likely to give just because that person needs it, and no other reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did upload. I have to make it public once it's dingoed. I did upload a debate between me and Hussein. Did you catch that one?
I'm not sure.
Or Hussein and I should say.
Yeah, that was the one where you filled in for Matt a week or two ago?
No, that was a second one, because I was supposed to debate Hussein, and that was sort of coming up last week. It was like a couple of days after the debate with Matt. But Ryan grabbed me and said, hey, Matt's cancelled like last minute. We need someone desperately. And I know that you're prepping for Hussein. And he's like, do you want to do this one? And then we'll also do this. And I'm like, okay, I guess, sure. So I actually have done two in about a week, kind of thing. So maybe that's the cause of my discombobulation. I've been talking with too many backwards Muslims. Maybe that's it.
Well, like I said, it's not just you.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, just a cheap shot there for the Muslims. Yeah. So yeah, I was just sort of discussing with Hussein of stuff, and I've had him a couple of times on this channel for sort of just interviews, and I like talking with Hussein. He's generally a good guy. He's just got one or two things that I trip over and go, how do you still believe that? Like, sorry, I thought you were at the after show for it, which was over on Doc Dino's channel, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah, that was yesterday, I think.
Yeah. So that was the debate, was yesterday.
Yep, and Ryan the Mod dropped by, and Doc was drunk, and
Yeah.
you should definitely, if you haven't seen that, you should go check it out. Doc Dino's got lots of cool stuff on his channel too. A lot of bio and geology, and also the occasional debate after party.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like. Well, I was going to do the after show, but I thought, Doc, he's doing a really good job, and he's getting started, and he's really, like, he's a lot more knowledgeable about rocks than I am. He's got a geology background. He likes paleontology. Really good. So go check out Doc Dino if you can, if you feel like seeing some real a real scientist, not just a schlub like me, actually do some stuff. He's a very, very good guy, and I'm glad he took the after show, because we got bombed by somebody trying to ruin it.
Yeah,
incredible foresight in retrospect from me. So I certainly didn't plan on that, but yeah.
Well done. Yeah, I thought about claiming the after party myself, and then I'm like, I'm tired and may dip out at any time, and also Doc really needs more people, more watch time, more subs, etc.
Sorry, that is loud. Hang on. Now I've got to turn it down.
Oh, overkill.
Yeah, I know. It's all fine. Don't do it. Okay. All right.
Take two.
What? He believes in marrying 9-year-olds. No, that's not good.
If I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he said something along the lines of, it was okay for Muhammad to do it, but nobody else should, which isn't great.
Think that's what he said.
It's not like he's, Daniel Pikachu, who's saying the 9-year-olds should get married so they don't get taken advantage of by people their own age. Instead, they should get taken advantage of by much older people. That's a great plan.
Yeah. No, he is a absolute scumbag. I am not afraid to say it. But apparently Matt Delahunty is going to debate him, which will be interesting. And I hope Matt doesn't get too mad at him, because his ideas, like the nightmare world we would live in if we lived under what Pikachu, Daniel Pikachu said, would be horrifying, just horrifying. Like, I mean, I ran into when Hussein sort of said, hey, cutting the hands off people should be fine. It's like, have you really thought about this? Like, have you thought about living in a world where that is happening? Like, really not cool. All right, I'll just check out the volume, Ember, and make sure it's good.
Thank you, Professor. Very generous introduction. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My first duty, which is also a pleasure, is to...
Please tell me that's loud enough.
It's better, but he's a little quiet. He's like, right now, he's at about half the volume you are, as it comes through my headset.
Thank the University of Notre Dame for inviting me onto its terrain. And Mr. Duffy in particular, in an institution that's also identified, I believe, with the great history and people of Ireland, for taking the revenge of arranging for English weather to greet me. Now, I've been given 15 minutes, which isn't that much, but I could do it in a way in two, like this, as a proposition.
Are you serious? Is that still too quiet? Because it is loud in my ears. It really is.
It's better. Now he's gone up a little bit. I'd say he's about 3/4 your volume.
Okay, is that loud enough to hear? Because I don't think I can do it any louder. I really don't. Maybe
I,
my
I think we can
ears
work
are
with it.
just sensitive. Okay. Maybe
Is
my
there a
ears
way
are
to?
just sensitive.
I was just thinking if there's a way to turn like your headset down, but then you'd have trouble hearing me.
Right.
Huh. Yeah, well, I think we can probably work with it. Hopefully.
Okay.
When Gertrude Stein was dying, some of you will know this story, she asked, as her last hour approached, well, what is the answer? And when no one around her bed spoke, she rephrased and said, well, in that case, what is the question? And I'm speaking tonight, we are speaking tonight, we're met tonight at an institution of higher learning. And the greatest obligation that you have is to keep an open mind and to realize that in our present state, human society, we're more and more overborne by how little we know and how little we know about more and more, or if you like, how much more we know, but how much less we know as we find out how much more and more there is to know. In these.
So this is a confusing statement. I get what he's saying. He's basically saying that the more we learn, the more we realize that we didn't know about the things that we didn't know. People leverage that against science. They sort of say, hey, the more we discover, the more we realize we don't know. And it's like, yeah. And they're sort of very fatalistic about it. They're like, what's the point of even trying? It's like, well, what? Like, what? To improve our lives? Like,
But
it doesn't make it better living in ignorance. Like, you realize that, don't you? Like,
but it's secularism that leads to nihilism, Mark.
right. Yeah, no, I get you. It's just, yeah. Like, if you are ignorant of a danger, it doesn't actually make it better. Like, if you discover that, hey, the sun could send out radiation that fries everything, it's like, well, living in ignorance about that doesn't help you. There's no situation where that gets better living in ignorance about it.
Yeah,
Here's
pretending your barn is not about to fall down doesn't stop it from falling down. You have to do something about it.
I suppose I could do it on YouTube, right? Thinking we're hearing on YouTube and you're hearing the source video. No, this is just naturally quiet. I don't know why they've done it like that.
Circumstances which I believe to be undeniable. The only respectable.
Yeah, I'm really sorry, everyone. That's the best I can get it. It just is yeah, it's a bit of a problem. Maybe we can turn our mics down and people can turn up the volume. I'm not sure.
We probably could do that, yeah.
All right. Well, do you want to cut your volume just a little bit, and I can cut mine a little bit?
Yeah. I'll go to 2/3.
Yep. Okay. All right. So that should have turned my mic down, volume down. So I do apologize, everyone, but this is the source material, unfortunately. Oh, you've heard this one and it's too low. John's saying. So yeah, this is just a problem with it. Damn, I wish I had a better copy.
Intellectual position is one of doubt, skepticism, reservation, and free, and I'd stress free and unfettered inquiry. In that lies, as it has always lain, our only hope. So you should beware always of those who say that these questions have already been decided. In particular, to those who tell you that they've been decided by revelation, that there are handed down commandments and precepts that predate, in a sense, ourselves, and that the answers are already available if only we could see them, and that the obligation upon ourselves to debate ethical and moral and historical and other questions is thereby dissolved. It seems to me that that is the one position, it's what I call the faith position, that has to be discarded first. So thank you for your attention, and I'm done. Except that...
well, that was a quick debate.
That I have a reputation for democracy.
Whoops. Except that was not the end of his introduction. I love how he did the fake end there. Except that, and watch as he just, yeah.
One thing I really enjoy about Hitchens is, a lot of his opponents, like Frank Turek, William Lane Craig, they make the same case every time. It's the same material. Hitchens always has something different to say.
Yeah. And I love the way that he it's almost like he weaves this sort of tapestry, this weaves these threads together. When I mean, this will not be now in his introduction, but later on he'll weave together what he said in his introduction with what they said and address it. Like it's like it's sort of like seeing a master craftsman at work. Like his mind works in such a way that he puts together what he's saying, what they're saying, and then weaves it together to make this solid sort of narrative kind of thing. And I mean, not narrative in the way that a fiction would be, but just how, you know, sort of how his introduction addresses it. It's very, very good. Oh, thank you, Fenton. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
To live up to. When I come to a place like this, I read the local paper, the Campus Observer in this case. And I was sorry to see that Dinesh and I are not considered up to the standards of Father Richard McBrien.
Slap. This is University of Notre Dame, which is a Catholic organization, I believe it is. They have campuses all around the world. We have a University of Notre Dame in my state, and we are nowhere. Like, we're in the middle of nowhere. We're so isolated. It's the weirdest campus. What do you mean?
The United States copy of Notre Dame, as we call it here, is in the middle of Indiana. I mean, it's like a few hours from Chicago. Technically, there's Indianapolis, but it may as well be in the center of Iowa.
Yeah, right. Okay. Wow. All right. Yeah. So ours is in Fremantle, which is a dock city, and its campus is like different buildings spread throughout the city. So you'll go there and you'll see students walking through the street because they're going from class to class. It's a weird place. Like, it's just, yeah, it's not a university. Like, most universities are a campus, right? It'll be, you know, an entire section of the city that's been, you know, that's the university, and you've got university campus. This is like a series of buildings all throughout one town. It's weird. It's just weird.
They're trying to take over the city.
Yeah.
Whose exacting standards, I dare say, are out of our reach. And I was also sorry to see myself and others represented in other papers, and in particular by a distinguished cleric in St. Peter's on Good Friday, who made a speech through which His Holiness the Pope sat in silence, Father Cantalam Messa, saying that people like myself are part of a pogrom, a persecution comparable only to that of the Jews, with the church in mind. This is the first time I've ever been accused of being part of a pogrom or a persecution. But as long as it's going on, I'll also add that it's the only pogrom I've ever heard of that's led by small, deaf and dumb children whose cries for justice have been ignored. And while that is the definition of the pogrom, I'll continue to support it because I think it demonstrates very clearly the moral superiority of the secular concept of justice and law over canon law and religious law, with its particular emphasis on self-exculpation in the guise of forgiveness and redemption. That's not the only reason why religion is a problem. It's a problem principally because it is man-made, because to an extent it is true, as the church used to preach when it had more confidence, that we are, in some sense, originally sinful and guilty. If you want to prove that, you only have to look at the many religions that people have constructed to see that they are indeed the product of an imperfectly evolved primate species, about half a chromosome away from a chimpanzee, with a prefrontal lobe that's too small, an adrenaline gland that's too big, and various other evolutionary deformities about which we're finding out ever more. A species that is predatory. A man is a wolf to man, homo homini lupus, as has well been said. A species that's very fearful of itself and others and of the natural order. And above all, very, very willing, despite its protestations of religious modesty, to be convinced that the operations of the cosmos and the universe are all operating with us in mind. Make up your mind whether you want to be modest or not. But don't say that you were made out of dust, or if you're a woman out of a bit of rib, or if you're a Muslim out of a clot of blood, and you're an abject sinner born into guilt. But add, nonetheless, let's cheer up. The whole universe is still designed with you in mind. This is not modesty or humility. It's a man-made false consolation, in my judgment, and it does great moral damage. It begins by warping what we might call our moral sense of proportion. I wish that was all that could be said, though I think that's the most important thing. I ought to say why I think it ought to be credited. And I ought to add that my colleagues Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett have been very generous in this respect. This debate would be uninteresting if religion was one-dimensional. Religion was our first attempt to make sense of our surroundings. It was our first attempt at cosmology, for example, to make sense of what goes on in the heavens. It was our first attempt at what I care about the most, the study of literature and literary criticism. It gave us texts to deliberate and even to debate about, even if some of those texts were held to be the word of God and beyond review and beyond criticism, nonetheless the idea is introduced, and it had never been introduced before. It's our first attempt at healthcare in one way. If you go to the shaman or the witch doctor when you make the right propitiations, the right sacrifices, and you really believe in it, you do have a better chance of recovery. Everybody knows it's a medical fact. Morale is an ingredient in health. And it was our first attempt at that, too. It was our first very bad attempt at human solidarity because it was tribe-based, but nonetheless, it taught that there were virtues in sticking together. And it was our first attempt, I would say, also, this is not an exhaustive list, at psychiatric care, at dealing with the terrible loneliness of the human condition, at what happens when the individual spirit looks out shivering into the enormous void of the cosmos and contemplates its own extinction and deals with the awful fear of death. This was the first attempt to apply any balm to that awful question. But, as Charles Darwin says of our own evident kinship with lower mammals and lower forms of life, we bear, as he puts it in The Origin of Species, we bear always the ineffaceable stamp of our lowly origin. I'll repeat it, the ineffaceable stamp of our lowly origin. Religion does the same thing. It quite clearly shows that it's the first, the most primitive, the most crude, and the most deluded attempt to make sense. It is the worst attempt, but partly because it was the first. So the credit can be divided in that way. And the worst thing it did was to offer us certainty, to say, these are truths that are unalterable, they're handed down from on high, we only have to learn God's will and how to obey it in order to free ourselves from these dilemmas. That's probably the worst advice.
Yeah, he's basically talking about sort of our stumbling steps out of the bleakness of putting down civilization. I always loved Carl Sagan's sort of thing of that science is just a candle against the darkness kind of thing. And I suppose before that, religion was like the sort of spark, that we sort of said, hey, here's the reasons all these things are happening. It kind of makes sense to me that we've stumbled up from, sort of monkey brain to this idea of something greater than us. And now we're sort of, refining what we know, but we're still holding on to these ideas. And I don't understand why. I really don't.
Yeah, like I was hemming and hawing a bit because of what he was saying. I get the point he's trying to make, of course, but it just, I don't know, call me pedantic, but the religion we have today is several steps down the road. The earliest religions didn't try to do all of those things
Right.
at once. Like ancestor worship was to put that balm on what happens to us when we die. And
Yeah.
then other tribes would have spirit worship. Like, this is why the storms come. This is why the river floods. These sort of things.
Primitive
And
animism kind of thing.
Yeah.
So animated, the storm's animated, and the trees are sort of have their own spirits, and sort of why things move when we don't move them kind of stuff. That explanation. Now we know it's physics and weather patterns and all of these things. But imagine being a monkey waking up to sentience and trying to explain why everything moves in the way it does. It's baffling, right? Why things creak when it's nighttime. Imagine that. Sorry, Amber, I don't mean to interrupt you, mate. I just
Oh no, it's all good.
Is what we're talking about.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's too much detail for the point he's trying to make, but it did stick out to me that religion isn't modern religion as we understand it today isn't the first attempt. It has evolved a bit, and the certainty thing may be why people cling to it. But I do appreciate what he's saying about how it's our worst attempt, because
Right.
I'm always telling people the first time you try anything, you're going to suck at it.
Yep.
That's the point, is you get better at it with practice. So go out and suck, and everything you do is a rehearsal for the next thing you do. And that's true for us as a species as well as individuals. Like, our first attempts at space flight were absolute disasters. It took a while to get even fairly good at it.
Yeah. America's first satellite attempt crashed and burnt on the launch pad. It was terrible. It was awful. They didn't think they would get to space at all. It's crazy. But yeah, and this is the thing, like, and this is why the criticisms of science, it's like it accepts that it's going to suck. It expects that. It has a mechanism for dealing with being wrong. That's the beautiful thing about it. It says, hey, we're going to get stuff wrong. That this is why the process has a mechanism for challenging what we think we know, because it is a process that has been designed to say, hey, we can't know everything. let's review what we do know. And that's what's beautiful about it. And that's the difference between science and religion, where religion says, no, contrary to everything you see, this is still right. Oh, hey, Kata.
Of all. Heinrich Heine says that if you're in a dark wood on a dark night and you don't know where you are and you've never been through this territory before, you may be well advised to hire as a guide the local mad, blind old man who can feel his way through the forest, because he can do something you can't. But when the dawn breaks and the light comes, you would be silly if you continued to operate with this guide, this blind, mad old man who was doing his best with the first attempt. To give you just two very contemporary examples, to have a germ theory of disease relieves you of the idea that plagues are punishments, that the church used to preach. That plagues come because the Jews have poisoned the wells, as the church very often preached, or that the Jews even exist and are themselves a plague, as the church used to preach when it felt strong enough and also was morally weak enough and had such little evidence. You can free yourself from the idea that diseases are punishments or visitations. If you study plate tectonics, you won't do what the Archbishop of Haiti did the other day, speaking to his sorrowing people after his predecessor had been buried in the ruins of the Cathedral of Port-au-Prince, along with 250,000 other unfortunate Haitians whose lives were miserable enough as it was, and to say, with the Cardinal Archbishop of New York standing next to him, that God had something to say to Haiti, and this is the way he chose to say it. If you study plate tectonics and a few other things, you will free yourself of this appalling burden from our superstitious, fearful primate past. And I suggest, again, to an institution of higher learning, that's a responsibility we all have to take on. If we reflect, some people say, the great Stephen Jay Gould, who I admired very much, from whom we all learned a great deal about evolutionary biology, used to say, rather leniently, I think, that, well, these are non-overlapping magisteria, the material world, the scientific world, and the faith world. I think non-overlapping is too soft. I think it's more a question, really, increasingly, of it being a matter of incompatibility, or perhaps better to say, irreconcilability. Just if you reflect on a few things I'll have time, I hope, to mention. My timer, by the way, isn't running, so I'm under your discipline, Professor. You'll give me... Very good. When we reflect that the rate...
I just want to say, I'm just looking. I just wrote the. Looks like Caterpillar and I think exactly the same, because I wrote that just as she wrote it. Sorry, just as they wrote it. I do apologize. Look, somebody impersonated Kata. We're all very mad about it. It's so insulting for them to do that. I think impersonation is the sincerest form of flattery, though. I think that whoever it was wanted to pretend to be a good person, and Kata's one of the best people. So you know, everybody's sort of outraged a bit, Kata. I know you don't need our protection, and you don't need it, but you know, just know that I really, it did really concern me that someone impersonated you. That's a horrible thing to do. And yeah, just all of our love to you, because you know, Kata, they try to be nice and kind, and to someone to use your name to do ill, it's a bad feeling, right? It just is like, oh, it's really horrible. Yeah, it wasn't even a very nice looking hairless caterpillar. Kata, it wasn't very nice at all. So yeah.
It was a nymph.
It was. Whoops. Okay, I don't want to print out that. No, thank you. I don't know why you did that.
The expansion of our universe is increasing. It was thought until Hubble that we knew it was expanding, but that surely Newton would teach us that the rate would diminish. No, the rate is increasing. The Big Bang is speeding up. We can see the end of it coming increasingly clearly, and while we wait for that, we can see the galaxy of Andromeda moving nearer towards the collision that's coming with us. You can see it now in the night sky. This is the object of a design, you think? What kind of designer in that case? To say that this must have an origin, and now we know how it's going to end, why ask why there's something rather than nothing when you can see the nothingness coming? Only replaces the question. Faith is of no use in deciding it. And that's on the macro level. From the macro to the micro, 99.8% of all species ever created, if you insist, on the face of this planet have already become extinct, leaving no descendants. I might add that of that number, 3 or 4 branches of our own family, Homo sapiens, branches of it, the Cro-Magnons, the Neanderthals, who were living with us until about 50,000 years ago, who had tools, who made art, who decorated graves, who clearly had a religion, who must have had a God, who must have abandoned them, who must have let them go. They're no longer with us. We don't know what their last cries were like. And our own species was down to about 10,000 in Africa before we finally got out of there, unforsaken this time or so far, to move from the macro, in other words, to the micro. Our own solar system is only halfway through its allotted span before it blows up. And as Sir Martin Ryle, the great astronomer Royal and professor of cosmology at Cambridge, and incidentally a believing Anglican, says, by the time there are creatures on the earth who look as the sun expires. They will not be human. It will not be humans who see this happen if our planet lives that long. The creatures that watch it happen will be as far different from us as we are from amoebae and bacteria. Faced with these amazing, overarching, titanic, I would say awe-inspiring facts, like the fact that ever since the Big Bang, every single second, a star the size of ours has blown up. While I've been talking, once every second, a star the size of our sun has gone out. Faced with these amazing, indisputable facts, can you be brought to believe that the main events in human history, the crucial...
Well, he says indisputable, but we've got like, you know, Donnie and his gang disputing those facts. Like, what do you do when the things that are obvious and evident within your society are still being disputed? Like, you know, the shape of the earth, for instance, or the age of the earth. You know, it's baffling. So, you know, I love you, Hitch, but when you say indisputable, that's not technically true. And what's even more worrying is these people are really pushing to have that taught. Even taught in public schools seems wrong to me. And I know they're already doing that. I don't know why they can't see the danger of that, having sort of a public that is undereducated or educated in sort of, you know, things that are clearly not true.
Yeah, it's very, very dangerous, very damaging. I mean, you know, look what's happened in the United States since the rise of the religious right in 1980. You know, we've got not only a shortage of doctors, but the doctors we do have tend to be less excellent than they were in the past. We have to import them from other countries because we don't have the educational infrastructure. I mean, we have the colleges, we don't have the students because we've dumbed things down so much. Very few people have the marks to potentially get into med school. It's very troubling. And it's like that across the board. Our cops are more brutal. Our military is suffering higher casualty rates. Like every single area where intelligence is a factor in efficiency or survival, we're down because we've shot ourselves in the foot, educationally speaking.
Yeah. And I think places like China would like nothing more for these things to take hold, because when you have a population of a country that's less educated, then you have less technology and less and sort of the technological advantage and the advantage in innovation is what America has sort of been. It's what kept them at the sort of high end of the countries. It has been their technological sort of, you know, progress and things like that. So, you know, I'm sure that China and Russia and all these countries, they would like nothing more for them to drop evolution, you know, and there goes a lot of the, you know, biogenetics and things like that, and drop, you know, geology and things, because, you know, if you're talking geology, you're talking about understanding how minerals interact with things. So, yeah. I'm sure they would love for us to drop our education to such a low standard.
Ones happened 3,000 to 2,000 years ago in illiterate desert Arabia and Palestine. And that it was at that moment only that the heavens decided it was time to intervene, and that by those interventions we can ask for salvation. Can you be brought to believe this? I stand before you as someone who quite simply cannot, and who refuses furthermore to be told that if I don't believe it, I wouldn't have any source for ethics or morality. Please don't pile the insulting onto the irrational and tell me that if I don't accept these sacrifices in the desert, I have no reason to tell right.
Oh, that's such a good line. Please don't pile the insulting onto the irrational. Wow. That's incredible.
For 1 minute. 1 minute, good. Then I'll have to prune, and you'll be the losers. But there's a rebuttal coming. All right. Look at the contemporary religious scene. I return to religion as well as faith and belief. Israeli settlers are stealing other people's land in the hope of bringing on the Messiah and a terrible war. On the alternative side, as it thinks of itself, the Islamic jihadists are preparing a war without end, a faith-based war based on the repulsive tactic of suicide murder. And all of these people believe that they have a divine warrant, a holy book, and the direct word of God on their side. We used to worry when I was young, what will happen when a maniac gets hold of a nuclear weapon? We're about to discover what happens when that happens. The Islamic Republic of Iran is about to get a nuclear weapon, and by illegal means that flout every possible international law and treaty. Meanwhile, in Russia, the authoritarian, chauvinistic, expansionist regime of Vladimir Putin is increasingly decked in clerical garb by the Russian Orthodox Church with its traditional allegiance to Tsarism, serfdom, and the rest of it. And Dinesh would have to argue, I'll close on this, Dinesh would have to argue that surely that's better than there be a mass outbreak of secularism in Russia and Iran and Israel and Saudi Arabia. And I would call that a reductio ad absurdum.
Well, yeah, no, I totally get where he's coming from. It'd be better to have a mass outbreak of secularism. I do want to point out last time there was a mass outbreak of secularism, the Americans put a stop to it. So what happened in Iran was that they had a democracy and they voted in a prime minister or a president, and that president was very, very unfriendly to the US. So the US sort of instituted the Shah, who was the traditional religious sort of, not religious, but aristocracy head. So he was a royalty figure. And so they basically put him, got him to be head of the country, and from there he was overthrown, and that was the start of the rise of a theocracy in Iran. So the theocracy in Iran can be traced back to the involvement of the US in the area. I don't think any of that is under debate. That is just what happened, and you know, they wanted a friendly dictator. So, yeah.
Yep, we did that in a lot of countries. Central America is still suffering from a very similar problem. We knocked over a whole bunch of democracies to put puppet dictators in charge.
Yeah. Whereas, you know, today we would know that was a huge mistake. We could just work with the people, you know, like China does now. I mean, China, you criticize them for their human rights, and it's atrocious what they're doing to the Uyghurs, and you know, the hold that they have on their people, but that they build infrastructure in countries and work with them to improve their quality of life, and then reap the rewards in trade. They're doing that through Africa right now, and I think it's the Belt and Hub. I think they've got, it's like a sort of a planet-wide road system for transferring goods. They improve schools in countries, they improve all kinds of things in countries, and it's why they're making such successful inroads into these areas, because they're actually helping, instead of, I don't know, giving out loans by the World Bank that are just basically unpayable, and watching these countries go into poverty, then taking their resources.
It's actually kind of ironic how capitalist multinational corporations had been doing something very much like that. Like a big corporation would go into an African country and say, hey, we're going to build schools, we're going to build hospitals, we're going to build roads. You just need to stay off our back while we go mine the shit out of those mountains, or you know, strip that rainforest or whatever. And you know, these countries, their GDP was smaller than the corporation. So they went with it. They got hospitals and schools and things. And now China, even though they're technically not capitalist, is as a nation doing the same thing. They're going in and building hospitals and roads and schools and things. And they're kind of colonizing without technically setting up colonies.
Yeah. Yep. Incredible.
And I'll leave you with it, and I'll be back. Thanks.
I don't know. And now Dinesh D'Souza. Do you want to use this one? It'd be great. Just face it my way. Yes. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. Wow, this is a beautiful auditorium, quite an event. I understand the tickets were I almost didn't get in myself. I have been listening with some interest to Christopher Hitchens. Listening to him, I feel a little bit like Winston Churchill during the Boer War. He said it is always exhilarating to be shot at without result. And And I say this because even if everything that Christopher Hitchens says is true, he has hardly demonstrated religion to be a very serious problem at all. He seems to say that religion is built into human nature.
Were you listening? Is this a rebuttal? Isn't this your introduction?
I do believe this is exactly what Christopher was talking about, how here's a whole bunch of facts that no one refutes, and here's Dinesh to go, I am going to just deny reality.
Right. Like he brought up a whole load of stuff from what the church has done and the things that it has done. What were you listening?
It's an evolutionary development that man has been searching for explanations since he set foot on the planet. Religion supplied functional explanations. Now perhaps we have better ones, even if all this were true. I'm going to dispute it and show it's not true, but even if it were true, this would hardly be a damning indictment of religion. Science itself has developed in the same way. It's been an explanation. It's gotten better over time. But what I want to do is meet Christopher on his own ground. He says we should be doubters, and I'm going to be a doubter.
That's like saying, oh, well, the first time I tried something, it absolutely sucked, but I should keep doing it that way because there's no real problem with it. What? Like,
oh, actually, that's a really good analogy. The difference between religion as it's understood today and science.
Yeah.
Like with science, you try to build a house and then it falls down and you go, what went wrong? Maybe I should put more supports in or something. And you try and try and eventually build a house that stands. Religion tries to build a house and it falls down. And then you do it exactly the same way because you're absolutely certain that's the right way to do it.
Right. Because you just say, well, it's basically it falls down and you go, well, that's a beautiful house. That's a beautiful house. Like you're adamant that it's a glorious house. Oh, Kata. Oh, thank you so much, Bug. They are just a beautiful person. Thank you, Mark and Ember, for $10 dues. Thank you, Mark and Ember, for hosting my favorite space to be on Sunday afternoon. Stay hydrated out there, Bugs. Yes, and take Kata's. They are absolutely correct. Take Kata's advice. Stay hydrated, you bugs. All bugs should stay hydrated. And look, Kata, absolutely always welcome. You are a wonderful person to hang with. Yeah, just to hang with. And I hope everyone feels welcome. And like Kata says, definitely stay hydrated. And I probably should have some more water. I'm thinking about it. So thank you so much.
I always
really
refill my water every time I step away from my desk.
Yeah.
He says we should be skeptics, and I endorse that completely. In this debate, at no time will I make any arguments that appeal to revelation, scripture, or authority. I'll make arguments based on reason alone. And I want to engage the argument on...
Sorry?
I'm going to hold him to that. I bet you a nickel he violates that in his first rebuttal.
Okay, all right, that's a bet. All right, and I don't know how much a nickel is worth, but sure. Is that like a penny? I don't know.
It's 5 cents.
It's 5 cents. Okay. 5 cent bet, which is probably about $1 in my currency.
His own ground not by making the easy argument for the utility of religion. It's good for us. It makes practical sense. It's consoling. That's all true. I'm going to actually make an argument for the truth of religion. And the argument I'm going to make, well, I call it the presuppositional argument, but it's an argument that requires a little bit of explanation.
Really? Oh, yeah, I'm going to presuppose it's true, and that's going to be my argument. That is the worst. Like, presup is the worst argument ever. I mean, it depends what his presup's going to be, but it'll be interesting to see, right? What exactly is he presupposing, and whether he should be presupposing it, or whether he could presuppose less and have a better chance of being correct. Okay.
Imagine if you're a detective and you approach a crime scene, and all the evidence points to a suspect, but it turns out he couldn't have done it. Why? Because the body was dumped in one location and he was in a completely different location. And then it hits you as a detective, wait a minute, perhaps the guy had an accomplice. Now, you don't know that he did, but the assumption that he did suddenly makes sense of all the other facts that were previously mysterious. Suddenly you see how the crime was committed to its very detail. If this seems like a little bit of an unusual way to argue, I want to emphasize that this is precisely the way in which scientists argue when faced with new phenomena. For example, scientists looking at galaxies out there have noticed that the galaxies hang together, and yet when you measure the amount of matter in them, there's not enough gravity to hold the galaxies together. They should be flying apart. And so scientists presuppose that there is some other form of matter, they call it dark matter, that must be there exercising a gravitational force. So even though we can't see the dark matter, it's detectable by no instrument, it explains what we do see. The presupposition of dark matter
That's
clarifies
not
the matter.
quite true.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, it's not a matter of the galaxies should be flying apart. It like Andromeda and our Milky Way, we're close enough that we're gravitationally attracted to each other. So we're flying.
Yeah.
It's the expansion of the universe isn't powerful enough that a local group of galaxies is significantly affected. We inferred the presence of dark matter because the stars on the outer edges of galaxies are moving much faster than they should be without
Yeah.
there being more mass beyond the edge of a galaxy. And
Right.
it is a placeholder. It's not something we've directly detected, but we have indirectly detected, and we're starting to build some pretty sophisticated maps of where the concentrations of dark matter may be in the cosmos.
Because black holes used to be sort of like dark matter. We inferred their existence because of certain phenomenon that was happening with gravity, but we couldn't see them. You can't see black holes. We still can't see black holes. That's the thing. All we can see is the light around them. And so, but at one point, this was said about black holes. There's no actual evidence that these things exist. Now we can say pretty confidently, yes, we know a ton about them, and we can pinpoint where they are by the light bending around them. But at one point, it was just something that was thrown out there. So same with sort of wormholes. Same with all of these things. We just say, "Hey, that's the hypothesis," and we're pretty confident about it, but we can't detect them at this
wormholes
time.
are so. They're still mathematical, but yeah, black holes. They were hypothesized a couple of times. Somebody in the 18th century posited what would happen if a star collapsed in such a way that the escape velocity necessary was more than the speed of light. Light couldn't escape. That was the first description of a black hole, and then there was the mathematical consequence of general relativity that showed a collapsing star under the right conditions would generate a black hole, and then now we have photos of a photo of a black hole. We don't see the hole itself; we see the accretion disk around it. But
and so his argument would be the same as that, like saying, "Hey, there's no." We're still trying to understand it. Nobody's saying we've got a handle on this thing. But it's a God of the gaps argument, because he wants to insert, well, if you can't explain it, then it's God that made it that way. No, you don't get to do that. Because nobody is saying, hey, because it's we don't know what it is, then it's this dark matter that is definitely a thing, and we know. No, we're saying that's a placeholder because we don't know what it is. We're acknowledging our lack of knowledge on it.
That is in front of us. And what I'm going to do is try to adduce some puzzling facts about life, and then ask whether the presupposition of God explains those facts better than any rival explanation. Christopher Hitchens has spent a lot of time telling us about evolution, and evolution as an effort to explain the presence of life on the planet. But of course, evolution does not explain the presence of life.
No, he referred to it. He didn't sort of like, he did mention sort of the ape kind of thing, so maybe that's what he's referring to.
Like his whole he referenced it twice. The thing about apes with too small prefrontal cortex, too big adrenal glands, and then also in another 5 billion years, when our solar system reaches the end of its life, what exists won't be any more human than we are, the cyanobacteria from 4 billion years ago.
So let's talk about it. I mean, he's talking about explaining things. Let's talk about explanatory power, right? God doesn't have any. When you actually understand what explanatory power is, God doesn't have any explanatory power, because it's got to account for the facts in a specific way, right? So, let's take his break-in thing. Like, so if you've got somebody who was in the area, it's got more explanatory power than somebody with an alibi, right? It accounts for the facts better. but God doesn't, like, it doesn't actually account for anything. It just, a God that's capable of anything doesn't account for anything at all, because you can just say God did it and it doesn't actually explain, like, it doesn't actually account for that. It's just this big, well, how did that happen? So he's sort of saying, hey, it explains it better, but if you understand explanatory power, it's not, because you're not giving an explanation. You're giving a non-explanation. You're giving a magic. It doesn't explain it.
Yeah, you might as well just SpongeBob it. Like, we don't need to explain that because magic.
Did you steal that from Hovland?
I'm pretty sure I stole it from Nickelodeon.
Good call. Good call. Good call.
On the planet, Darwin knew that. Evolution merely explains the transition between one life form and another. That's very different from accounting for life itself. Consider, for example, the primordial cell. If you read Franklin Harold's book, The Way of the Cell, this is a biologist at the University of Colorado in Boulder, he describes the cell as a kind of supercomputer. It is of a level of complexity. Even Richard Dawkins, in his work, describes the cell as a kind of digital computer.
Do you know what an analogy is? Do you understand that they're sort of trying to, because we understand things that we don't know in terms of things that we know. It's why when you're sort of learning something, it's helpful for someone to go, well, it's like this, right? I'm always reminded of learning object-oriented programming for the first time. And about 3 people explained it to me, and I just didn't get it. Like, you can't get it. And then someone explained it to me in terms of a D&D character sheet, and I got it. Like, it clicked then, right? So that's how we explain things. But objects in programming are not D&D character sheets, right? That's what they're not. But the way that we're explained things is in terms of things we already understand. So they're trying to say, for a start, it's not digital, because it, it's not based upon, it's not electronic either. The DNA, sort of what they call code, is not algorithmic, so it's not like computer code. There's a lot different. There's a lot that is similar, but it's not a supercomputer. It just isn't.
Yeah.
Nothing. No, Daryl's right. It's more like a self-configurable programming analog computer is nothing like a digital computer. Absolutely right.
Yeah. That's the word, analog. Because digital sounds fancier. It's like when people put quantum in front of things just to make it sound fancier rather than actually in reference to. I'm sure he'll get there.
Dinesh is guilty of that one as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But no, Daryl, spot on, mate. Absolutely. And sort of what people call DNA code, I think it's more like a computer instruction set, which is different again, because code is for humans. A computer doesn't process code, right? The code is for us. The computer processes instructions, which is sort of, so it's more like an instruction set than anything else. But it's sort of neither here nor there, because there's some dissimilarities which make them not the same. It just isn't the same thing.
Yeah, it's more useful, at least for me, to think of DNA as blueprints. It's a library of blueprints.
Don't blame Gurr. Don't blame Gurr. Don't blame Gurr for you, Maynard. I'm onto your tricks. Oh, look, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's all good. It's all good.
Now, the cell can't have evolved because evolution presupposes the cell. Evolution requires a cell that already has the built-in capacity to reproduce itself.
That's why we don't go for evolution to cell origins. We go to abiogenesis.
Yeah, the modern theory of biodiversity starts once life already exists, and many definitions of what life is requires cellular life to already exist. It has to be a cell. That's our description we put on that. Now, we've started to revise that. There's some models that include things like viruses as a separate domain, which are non-cellular. So we're getting there.
They might not even be alive.
Right. Things get fuzzy at the
Yeah.
periphery. This happens with every science, just like the Big Bang. At what point do you put the universe didn't exist? The universe does exist.
Right.
Like, where
Right.
in there did it's fuzzy. We don't know for
Yeah.
sure. But
Yeah.
life didn't just boop, there's a cell. No, there was a process. Chemicals started snapping together. Some of them self-replicated, some of those replicated with errors, some of those had helpful errors, and they started to overtake the other chemicals. Eventually you build up to a cell, but it took probably hundreds of millions of years. We don't know for sure, but
Yeah,
there's
no
a
idea.
process to get to the cell in the first place.
Yeah, and I noticed we've got Grayson in the chat, and Grayson's got a really good video on amyloid world, which is sort of one of the explanations that is possible that it could have come about. I really recommend it, and I'll pop Grayson's channel in there. So he does a lot of stuff as sort of someone with a biology background on how these cells could have developed. But that is not evolution. Evolution deals with, like, just because evolution doesn't cover the origin doesn't mean there isn't any field covering origin of life. You're sort of saying, hey, because it doesn't cover it, then we don't know. No, we're researching it. Like, it's just not evolution that deals with that part. That deals with the changes in organisms over time. So I don't know why you would expect evolution to cover it. It'd be like computer science isn't covering the electrical grid, and it's like, well, of course it's not. That's not what it's there for. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's related, but it's not the same field. Electrical engineering is a thing.
Yeah, or like, who invented the first computer? Well, what do you mean by the first computer? Are you counting
Right.
the Antikythera mechanism? Are you counting
Mhm.
abacuses? Like, where
Yeah.
do you put the line? What is the first
Well,
computer?
originally computers were people.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that? That was somebody who did mathematical equations. They were called a computer.
Mm-hmm. They had them on the Manhattan Project
Mhm.
in Los Alamos, in Fermilab even. Fermilab was founded before we had mechanical computers that could outperform
Right.
humans. It's pretty
And
hilarious. There's
yeah, and so
pictures of NASA's computers who calculated the orbital stuff for the Apollo missions
Mhm.
next to their stacks and stacks of equations. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
And many of them were women,
yeah.
by the way.
And if you love your computer, pour one out for Alan Turing, a gay man who probably saved like 2 million lives during World War II. Just an incredible person. And it is a travesty what happened to him. A travesty. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how did we get a cell? The very idea that random molecules in a warm pond through a bolt of lightning assembled a cell would be akin to saying that a bolt of lightning in a
Got that straw man. Is that a straw man? Straw
Oh,
man?
yep, sure is. He's building
Yep.
up an argument that nobody's making. Nobody
Uh-huh.
says lightning bolt hit a puddle and created a cell. The fuck is
Yeah.
wrong with you, Dinesh?
I mean, I'm not sure how long ago this was, but even ages ago, that was not an accurate statement. Like, even if you believe in thermal vent, it or hydrothermal theory or hypothesis of origin of life, that's still not accurate. It's not a bolt of lightning hit pond. That is this is what I mean. The guy's slimy. He really doesn't. That is a really slimy thing to do, is to represent it like that. You'd expect better from a professional debater.
warm pond could assemble an automobile or a skyscraper. It's preposterous. Richard Dawkins knows it's preposterous, and therefore when asked, how did we get life originally, he said, well, maybe aliens brought it from another planet. It's
Oh,
ridiculous.
fuck off with that, Dinesh.
That is not true. He says we don't know, which is the truth. We don't know. Look, the only reason someone would say that, and I've said that in the past, is to say, hey, it is a false dichotomy to say it was of sort of natural origin, a natural process, or God, because a false dichotomy you can give another that doesn't fall into either of those two categories, and that's aliens, right? It's not a natural process, and it's not God, right? That's the only reason I'd give it. But panspermia, I don't believe in that either, because there's no evidence for it.
Although it is fascinating when they quote Mind Dawkins in that fashion to be like, oh, well, he says it's aliens.
Yeah.
So you're just taking abiogenesis and kicking it back a step to some unknown that we can't detect or disprove or whatever. What kind of science is that? While at the same time saying clearly it was an invisible magic being that we cannot detect or disprove. You're like,
yes,
the projection, it's crazy.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. You know, and I've said it before. Creationists are immune to irony. You know, they're just immune to it. They just don't pick up on it at all. It just is,
In a way, the best explanation he could come up with, other than intelligent design. So there we go. We have the mystery of the cell. But evolution raises further puzzles, because evolution depends upon a universe structured in a certain way. Evolution depends on a sun that's 8 light minutes away. Evolution depends upon the constants of nature. If I were to pick up a pen and drop it, it will fall at a known acceleration to the ground, gravity. The universe has a whole bunch of these constants, hundreds of them. Scientists have asked, what if these constants, on which evolution depends, what if these constants were changed a little bit? What if the speed of light were a little slower or a little faster? This question is addressed by Stephen.
Sorry, I'm a little slow today. Did you want to kick in something?
Yeah. We've talked about the fine-tuning argument a number of times before. So just to TLDR, no. While it's possible that if the constants of the universe were different, if it's even possible for them to be different, life may not have developed the same way it developed, but we have no idea what the parameters are for a life-permitting universe, possibly a different kind of life. We don't have to be 8 light minutes from the sun. That Goldilocks zone thing is nonsense. That's, I mean, hell, the Earth moves millions upon millions of miles within its orbit in a normal year. And then there's also Boyle's law. Temperature and pressure matter a whole lot more than your distance from the sun. But that's just that one area. If gravity were slightly stronger, if gravity were slightly weaker, if the speed of light were slightly faster, we don't know that those would impact evolution in any significant way. And even if they did, we'd just evolve in a way that works within those rules, because that's
Those
what
parameters,
evolution does, is adapt to the conditions you have.
I think that you know, we've got no way to investigate whether, if the universe constants were different, whether a universe would form or not. We can kind of go, okay, that's you know, we think that would be likely or unlikely that the universe wouldn't form or what have you, but we don't know for sure because we can't investigate it. We've only got one universe with these constants. And as a good friend of mine, Simos, pointed out, he sort of said, well, how do we know? Like when you're saying, hey, the unlikelihood of a universe forming with these specific constants that we happen to have, how do you know that there was an equal chance of all constants, right? How do you know that it wasn't like a 99% chance we would have these constants? Because we don't know the process over which the universe formed. So how do you know what chance it was for the universe to form like this or form in another way? It might have been an almost certainty to form like this because the process demanded that that's the output, that's the eventuality. How do we know? We don't. It's just you will assume because, you know. Oh, I'm sorry, Bree. Yeah, you're right. No need to drag other people into my mess. Look, if I'm going to suffer here, or everyone else is going to suffer. That's. Oh, I just think his arguments are so slimy, you know, and just very, very. I don't know. It's just there's something about him that just is like he sort of wants to move past things really fast. I just think he's a little bit dishonest in the way that he presents stuff. Personally,
a lot of hand waving.
Yeah.
Hawking, in his book A Brief History of Time, he says that if you change these constants of nature at all, and he's talking about the rate of expansion of the universe, he says if you change that, not 10% or 1%, but 1 part in 100,000 millionth million, we would have no universe, we would have no life. Not just Homo sapiens, no complex life would have evolved anywhere. In other words, our very existence here is dependent upon the fine-tuning of a set of constants.
You want to finish that quote, Dinesh? So Hawking,
Why, what's the rest of it?
Hawking says that if the rate of expansion of the universe or gravity were different by one part in a very large fucking number, then we wouldn't have a universe at all. Either it would have flown apart in the instant of inflation, never to form galaxies, or it would have collapsed back into the singularity virtually instantly. And then he spends 5 pages showing the math that demonstrates it could not have been any other
Right.
value than what we find it has. So
Right.
Hawking, he does a Darwin. He poses the question. He says some critics may
Mhm.
say this, and then he spends basically a whole chapter showing how that's stupid and what we observe is fucking inevitable.
Right. Because it's the only way a universe could have formed.
Yes. Mathematically, which is the
Mhm.
only form of actually proving things that works.
Yeah.
Talking about just on Earth, the entire universe. This argument that is sometimes called the anthropic principle of the fine-tuned universe, this has put modern atheism completely on the defensive. Why should the universe be structured in precisely this way and no other way?
You aware we're on the defensive? Were you aware of that, Ember? I didn't know. I didn't know I was
mean,
supposed to be defensive.
we are outnumbered, so there's that.
Well, that's that. Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm fine with being outnumbered. I think the worse your argument, the more people you need, cheering you on. Plus, it doesn't seem like atheism is losing. More people are deconverting at a greater rate than ever before. So much that religions are in a panic about it. And I certainly don't think we're being on. Having said that, the fine tuning is probably the best argument they have. So I'm not surprised he's going to it. I just don't think it's a very good argument, but it's the best they've got.
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly, and it sounds daft, but I really think P-Town's terrible argument is the best argument.
Really? The moon one?
Because it's a thing we can actually observe that's really there, right?
No.
Like all this other stuff is just speculation or large number this or the moon fucking exists. So there's that.
No, I totally disagree. Like P-Town's argument is literally look at the trees, except instead of the trees,
It's look at the moon.
the moon. Look at the moon. That's essentially his entire argument.
And yet, yes, it's an awful, terrible, no good, very bad argument. But in my opinion, it's the best one.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion. I think fine-tuning is better than that, because that is literally just look at the thing that we can explain, but I think is cool.
Hey, tide goes in, tide goes out. No one understands why.
Magnets, how do they work?
Yes.
What is the best explanation? Is there an atheist explanation? I'd like to hear it. Let's move on.
Yeah, well, if you'd read the rest of the chapter.
I don't know if he even read the book, because they all pick that. He didn't even quote it right. So I think he got that quote from William Lane Craig or something.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Explain the depth of human evil. What I mean by this is simply this. Evolution presumes cruelty. Evolution presumes...
What? No, it doesn't. What are you talking about? No. Presumes cruelty. It presumes indifference, but it also presumes. Well, it's a weird way to phrase it, because it doesn't really presume it. It just it leads to competition, but it also leads to cooperative competition as well. So it's also, I don't.
It's like the other side of that coin when the argument from beauty. Look at all the beautiful things in the world. There's flowers, there's bees, there's butterflies, which is effectively look at the trees. In order to make that argument, you have to ignore all the ugly things that also exist, like cancers and parasites and such. It's the same thing, but he's applying it to evolution instead of to God. And he's saying, look at all the ugly things. Well, there could be cruelty, there could be harm, there could be tyrannosaurs eating, baby diplodons, or Doc Dino's probably having an aneurysm because I put 2 animals from different periods together, but you know what I mean.
Harshness, but it is a harshness tempered by necessity. Think of a lion. It wants to eat the antelope because it's hungry. But have you ever heard of a lion that wants to wipe every antelope off the face of the earth? No. So how do you explain this human evil that
I don't know. Have you talked to many lions?
Yeah, that's an interestingly weird point for him to
Yeah.
make. Yeah, I've heard a number of people make the argument that lions kill only to eat, and often it's accompanied by a photo of a lion literally laying next to a gazelle, because if it's not hungry, it's not going to kill anything. Only humans make war, and that's
not true.
kind of yeah, emus do too, we know, but
Yeah, no, well, not only emus. Wow, how dare you? Not only emus, but also chimpanzees have wars. They have intertribal wars, so that's 100% not true. We've been observing like a couple of very aggressive tribes of chimpanzees wiping out other troops of chimpanzees. Sorry, the correct term is troop. So yeah, we do know that other apes do make war on each other. Not so much bonobos and gorillas and stuff, but definitely chimpanzees. Thank you so much, Kentucky Atheist, for 99 US cents. And you know, you haven't put a message or anything, but I'm happy for you to do so. Thank you so much. At least I know my worth. Chimps go to war. Yeah, absolutely. No, Bree will back me up on that. And I believe it's a troop that they're called. A group of chimps is called a troop. Yeah, cats are notorious for killing for no reason.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But as far as his argument about deliberately trying to make something extinct, I still can't say that's a human exclusive. But arguing that humans do that is somehow evolution's problem, as opposed to, say, a religion that says we need to wipe out all the non-believers, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Don't orcas hunt sharks just to get rid of them? Don't they? Aren't they very sort of? They'll just hunt sharks for the hell of it, kind of thing. I think orcas will actually do it. Surplus killing is the term for it. Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. Humans are probably the best at it, but that doesn't mean we're the only animals that do it. So we're just the most capable of doing it. I think, you know, we've got some sophisticated weapons for doing it.
Ooh, Doc Dino just linked Sue, the famous T-Rex skeleton that was found. Brand new recreation of it. That's what that link is in the chat, of Sue eating another dino because it's snack time.
Well, yeah, but he's talking about killing for not for a purpose. He's talking about killing for just to kill, basically. So like Bree said, surplus killing. Well, that's it's looking right at me. What is that, a hadrosaur? Iguanodon? Does it have the thumbs? What is it eating? Doc, tell us. People need to know. The people need to know. Did I just lose Ember? I just lost Ember. Hello, welcome back. Did I misclick something? Did I throw you out or something accidentally? Or did you just drop for a second?
I went to close the window with the Sue model in it, and my mouse missed. I closed
Okay.
the
No worries, no worries. Look, we'll never speak of it again. Juvenile Edmontosaurus. Okay, cool. Start a lesbian relationship with
oh my
nice.
Interspecies love.
Interspecies.
How liberal.
Far outruns necessity and reaches depths that seem almost unfathomable. Evolution cannot account for rationality, because evolution says we are programmed in the world to survive and reproduce. Our minds are organs of survival. They are not organs of truth. So if we believe in rationality, we require something outside of evolution to account for that.
No.
I'm sorry, are you saying that rationality comes from God? Is that what he's saying?
I think that's what he's trying to imply.
I think that sort of as humans have developed, like instincts are all very well and good, and they can allow you to act in certain specific circumstances very, very fast. Like so instincts are the quickest reactions that we have. But like rationality can be very useful once you get into the stages of building a sort of tribal system, right? So when you've come out of the sort of hunter-gatherer into a tribal system, you know, being able to follow tracks, for instance, you know, you can think about it rationally rather than just instinctively go, oh, which way did they go? To be able to make tools, you need rationality. You don't really do that instinctively. Do you know what I mean? Like you can't do the things that we do, or the things that other chimpanzees do, just using instinct. I believe chimps have to be taught how to make tools. They don't just instinctively do it.
Yeah, they figured it out gradually, and the same way we did. Yeah, he's saying that our brains are designed for survival. So how do you explain rationality? It's a
Yeah.
survival advantage, you twit. That's why the tool making branch of
Yeah.
the human line is the one that's still around.
Yeah. It explains it just fine. And pattern recognition explains just fine. Pareidolia, evolution explains perfectly. There's a lot of things that are explained perfectly by evolution that the theist explanation is really lacking, like really lacking. Why do we see faces in the clouds? Why can we overlay patterns? Why do we use all of these things? It's sort of, well, God wanted us to. Well, that doesn't explain anything. What's the purpose of God wanting us to see faces in the clouds? What's the point?
So we feel like something up above is always watching.
Yeah, but we see it in trees as well. We see it, we see shapes everywhere. We can assign, if you see a tree in the darkness, you can see a face in that. We've probably all been sort of, put on wary by seeing a person where there is no person. Why? There's an evolutionary reason for that, but there isn't one from the God people, except to say, hey, God wanted it like that. Yeah, absolutely, John. Survival mechanism, pattern recognition, absolutely.
Evolution can't even account for morality.
Oh, sure it can. What are you talking about?
I was just making assertions. I need a button for just making assertions.
Yeah. Insertion assertion incoming. Yeah.
And this requires a little bit of explanation. So think of a couple of moral facts. And I'm not talking about heroic deeds of great.
But what if you don't think there are moral facts? Like, what if moral facts don't exist? I mean, it'd be nice if there were moral facts, but what if that's not a thing?
Let's think of simple things. Getting up to give your seat to an old lady in a bus. Donating blood. There's a famine in Haiti, you volunteer your time.
Really? Really? Is it moral to donate your blood to save a mass murderer if they're going to go on to keep killing?
Yeah, a lot of it's pretty situational.
Is it moral to give your seat to an old lady if you're crippled and you can't stand up for any more than 5 minutes? Is that moral?
Yeah,
this is the thing. They want to. Yeah.
Let's draw a distinction between moral obligation and moral virtue. Like Matt mentioned earlier in the debate on the other channel, being a vegan is morally virtuous, but it isn't morally obligatory. Like, you're probably a better person if you do that, but you're not a bad person for not doing that.
Yeah, that's like so something that's a moral necessity or morally a obligation would be to not kill anybody. Basically, as soon as you do that, it's automatically moral, or murder anybody, I should say. But it doesn't make you an immoral person if you don't donate all your money to charity. You would be morally virtuous. You'd be a better person. But it
or
doesn't
giving blood
make
for that matter.
Yeah,
like,
or giving blood.
It's your blood. That's part of bodily autonomy. It's wonderful if you do it, but nobody's going to think less of you if you don't.
Right. Whereas if you murder somebody just to harm them, then you're automatically immoral. Then you've been immoral. That is a necessity in order to be a moral person, is not to go around harming people. And Ember is siding with the cats, apparently.
Oh, don't make me get out Cat Jesus. Cat Jesus is going to lay the smackdown.
Oh. There you go. Perfect. The perfect being. I'm sorry. I'll send myself out.
Or you write a check. Now, if we are evolved primates who are programmed to survive and reproduce, why would we do these things? There's a whole literature on this, and basically it comes down to this. The advocates of evolution say, well, evolution is a form of extended selfishness. If a mother jumps into a burning car to save her 2 children, that's because she and her children have the same genes. So
No.
what seems like an altruistic...
Adoptive parents will do the same thing. It's because their internal priorities are, I need to protect my children whom I love and care about and put ahead of myself. Nothing to do with genetics.
And it's also, evolution talks in terms of populations. So one social creature can develop in such a way that the individual will sacrifice itself to save the population. That is not unusual.
Actually, that reminds me, there's
bees will do that all the time. Like they will sacrifice themselves in order to preserve the population.
Yeah, I've seen videos, possibly from Brie, where a wasp breaks into a bee's hive or nest or what have you, and the bees will just surround it and start buzzing, buzzing, buzzing to create more heat until eventually it kills the wasp. It kills them too, but that doesn't matter to them because they're just drones and they've defended the hive successfully.
Yeah, and I mean that's a bit different because they are, I think they are clones. They're the clones of the queen, but the point still stands that even other animals they will sort of sacrifice on behalf of their group or their you know, it isn't that uncommon.
Yeah, one of the Babylon 5 nerd stuff. One of the scenes that sticks in my head the most is these 2 Minbari who were the aliens who were like super wise and well, some of them were super religious, but they're like all about peace and logic and so forth. Not like Vulcans, but anyway, it doesn't matter. The one is about to basically solve the problem of the week by sacrificing himself. He's going to give his life to fix the problem so everybody else can live. And the other Minbari says, you can't do that because reason. Like, you know, I just met you again after 5 years or something. And just out of nowhere, he says something like, one of the things that defines a sentient species is the ability to voluntarily give one's life for the betterment of others.
Wow,
and Titan
that's
wants
cool.
blood.
Yeah. Oh yeah, thank you, Titan, being a member for 2 months. Thank you so much. And where is the blood? I was promised blood. I made no such promise.
I can
don't
help
know.
with that.
Okay. You're a vampire? Wow, all right. That's that looks like jam, but yeah, okay. That's not just the blood, Titan, that is blood of the Lord. Blood of the Lord. Now let's drink it and be forgiven for our sins.
Yep, wash our white
Which is a
linens in it.
weird thing. Yeah, wash away our sins in blood. That's a good ethic for modern society. Wow.
noble deed is actually merely a cunning strategy on the part of a mom to make sure her genes make it into the next generation. We're not talking about her Levi's. We're talking about her genetic.
Oh, ha, ha, ha.
If this were a drinking stream, we'd have to take a shot right there.
Yeah, right. The bad pun, D'Souza.
Joke that did not land.
Inheritance. Or evolution appeals to what can be called reciprocal advantage. You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. A businessman may be nice to a customer, not because he thinks he's a great guy, but because he wants him to come back into the store again. But these 2 common evolutionary strategies to explain morality don't explain the 3 examples I gave at all. I'm in a bus, the old lady hobbles in. She's not a relative, she isn't grandma. So genetic kinship doesn't come into it, and neither does reciprocal advantage. I don't say, well, you know, I think I'll give her my seat because next week I want her seat.
Yeah, but you might be old one day. So if you want to live in a society where old people are respected and given seats, then you've got to do the same thing. This is the thing, like, you're not understanding, like, what if you want to live in a society where people will help each other, then you've got to help other people, or else you won't live in that society. I just don't understand why he doesn't understand this. It's not about immediate reciprocity, and it's not about exact reciprocity. It's not about getting the exact thing back. but it's getting society to be something reflective of the way that you act. Wow. Oh, thank you, me. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I really
Hey.
appreciate it. Love your picture.
Yeah, that is a cool picture. Yeah, I think he's just straight up building a straw man here. He's saying, in order
Yeah.
for people to do good things, it has to be one of these three categories. When
Right.
it instantly, it's obvious that that's not right. Like, the businessman might be nice to a customer because he wants him to spend money and come back, or maybe he's just a nice person.
Yeah.
I mean, anti-capitalist I may be, just because a person owns a business doesn't mean he's automatically a dick. He
Right.
might actually be a nice person, you know? So Dinesh is just dismissing all the possible goodness in humankind and saying it
Mhm.
has to be selfishness or genetics or what. And it's effectively it's not a false dichotomy. It's like a false four option quadratomy or whatever.
Mm.
He's saying it has to be this, this, or this. And if not, then God. And that's
Right.
blatantly not true.
Yeah. Yeah. And morality and why we act the way we are, it's incredibly complex. There's a lot of things going on. There's behavioral patterns of when you were raised. There's things that you've learnt throughout your life. Maybe the guy was in a store and someone was nice to him. And so he learned, hey, that's actually a good thing because I felt good when somebody, you don't know that the only reason is because he wants the customer to come back. And so what about all the owners in the shop that are dicks to people? What about them?
Titan
You
says
know,
we're missing the obvious. That Dinesh is just a dishonest dick.
No, I think he means the blood thing, and I'm probably missing that. Look, I miss the obvious a lot, Titan. You know this already, mate. Like so yeah. Yeah, don't feed my norms ego. Definitely not. Don't. Thank you, Farron. Keep me down to earth, mate. Keep me down to earth. Don't let me get a big head. Yeah, all good, buddy. Yeah, I'm not getting it, Titan. You're gonna have to enlighten me, because I've missed it completely.
Beamsy knows. Beamsy actually named the episode I was referencing. That's impressive.
Oh, okay.
Because that show is 25 years old.
I never saw Babylon 5. I saw a couple of episodes late night on TV here and there, but I never really, watched it and didn't know the storyline or whatever. I didn't know. I've heard good things about it. It's probably one that I got to go back and watch at some point.
I loved it. You may not appreciate it as much now because honestly, the philosophy is kind of sophomoric, but I was in my middle teens when the show was on, and so it hit right at my intellectual development, you know?
Right. No, it might be. I think my favorite science fiction show would probably be The Expanse. I loved that series. I thought it was amazing. It's hard to get a series better than Star Trek, but I loved it. Did you ever see The Expanse?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it's very recent.
It's too new.
Actually.
I haven't seen. The Walking Dead season 1 is the most recent show that I've seen like regularly.
Yeah, Walking Dead, I didn't mind it. It just sort of went off the rails a little bit. That's all.
I've heard.
Anyway, we're getting so totally sidetracked into science fiction.
Us? No.
It's never happened before. Will never happen again, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, you give up your seat because you're a nice guy. You give up blood because you want to do a good thing. You donate your time to help strangers who are genetically unrelated to you and can't reciprocate your favors. These are the simple facts of morality in the world. And what is the evolutionary explanation for them? There is none, or if there is one, I would like to hear it. So in debating these issues, very often it's very easy to knock the burden of proof onto the theist and say, you explain everything. But no, in the world, we're not in a position where there's only one explanation contending. There are rival explanations. There is a theist explanation, the God explanation, and there is a non-theist or atheist explanation. We have to weigh the two against each other. My contention is that the atheist explanation flounders when confronted with all these facts: the complexity of the cell, the fine-tuning of the universe, the fact of morality, the depth of human evil.
I don't think morality is like the fact of morality. He's sort of setting it up as, well, morality is objective. But depending on what country you go to, giving up your seat might be moral or may not be moral. Even like, just let's take another thing. Talking on the bus may be moral or not moral, depending on which country you're in. In Japan, it's considered incredibly offensive to talk on the trains, like just even to have a conversation. It's there for silence. But whereas if you're in another country, you know, having a conversation is fine. And in some countries, having a loud conversation is fine. But, you know, in my country, having a loud conversation on the train is generally considered very rude. It's considered immoral. So it all depends on where you go. That you know, and it may even vary within that country. So it doesn't, like, the problem that you're saying, hey, there's these moral facts, it doesn't explain moral diversity. If there is an all-seeing, all-powerful God, all you know, knowing God behind everything, why is there such moral diversity? Why aren't the morals the same?
It is a puzzle.
It's a puzzle. Like, did God give these moral facts to one people and different moral facts to another people? Did he change them up? Who's right? How do you tell who's right about these moral facts? Is it that he just wanted to, you know, make people fight over what was right and what was wrong? What's going on here? What kind of a goddamn God does that? You know, like, gives different people. I'm sort of borrowing from George Carlin a bit. So what kind of goddamn God gives different people different rights?
But he loves you.
But he loves you. And he needs money. Buy my DVDs.
Yes.
The reality of morality in the world. What about the God explanation? Seems obvious to me. It does one heck of a lot better. Why do we have a cell that shows the structure of complexity? Because the cell has been intelligently designed, perhaps by an intelligent designer. Why does the universe show complexity and rationality? Well, those are the characteristics of the creator who made it that way. Why are there depths of human evil? Because our lives are a cosmic drama in which good and evil are in constant struggle. The Christian story. Why is there morality in the world? Why do we all feel, even when it works against our advantage, a moral law within us? Well, that's because there is a moral lawgiver who gave it to us. So when we put it all together, the presupposition of God is invisible. I can see that. We can't see him. But if we posit him...
Did he just say, God is invisible, I can see that?
No, I can't see that. I think he said, look, I can rewind it a shade. Oh, I've broken it. I've totally broken. I shouldn't expect that.
Feel,
Suddenly...
even when it works against our advantage, a moral law within us? Well, that's because there is a moral lawgiver who gave it to us. So when we put it all together, the presupposition of God is invisible. I can see that. We can't see him. But if we posit him...
Yeah, he did.
I
can see
that.
Oh, right. We can't see him. Right. Gotcha.
Yeah, that makes a bit more sense.
A little, yeah.
All these mysterious facts, suddenly the lights come on. It provides an explanation.
That's because the explanation is so broad, you could use it to explain literally anything. That's what I mean about yeah.
I mean, if you're just going to make shit up, you can make anything up. You can say universe creating pixies wanted there to be the fine-tuned universe and cellular life and
morality.
Whatever the fuck you want. You can make anything do that. The ancestor spirits. Granted, the ancestor spirits weren't ancestors at the time the universe was created, but they self-actualized like Roko's basilisk.
Right. And you can sort of but also, like, what's the actual explanation behind it? You're just saying something else did it. Well, how did that thing do it? Don't know. Don't care.
Yeah,
it doesn't actually explain it.
We can look for the real reasons, or we can just pretend we already have the answers and pat ourselves on the back about it.
And why? Why give humans morality at all? Because he wants to.
Seemed like fun.
Yeah. So at least evolution gives a sort of why, because it's in our survival advantage to cooperate. Because that is the strength of our species to be able to survive, is cooperation. You aren't giving an answer at all because, you know, it's weird.
Now, again, with any presuppositional argument, there may be a better alternative explanation. And so I put the ball into Christopher Hitchens' court to say,
Yeah.
In fact, damn near any argument's going to be a better argument.
Yeah.
if you can explain these facts better than I can, I will happily, as a skeptic, concede to your point of view. Give me a better explanation for these facts.
Spoiler, he won't.
Yeah, no, we've got better explanations for those facts. Because of all of the explanations we've ever come up for anything, none of them has turned out to be, we're sure it's God. All of the explanations have been naturalistic ones. That's the thing. So, you know, from lightning to earthquakes to why skin regenerates, none of them has turned out to be supernatural. None of them. All it takes is time and understanding, and it always turns out to be naturalistic. So I don't know why you would say, hey, some being I can't even describe is causing this to happen somewhere. It seems nonsense to me.
Yep.
But ultimately, we know that belief is good for us. If it was a primitive explanation of 3,000 years ago, why would it be the case that religion hasn't disappeared 3,000 years ago? Why is it the case that we're actually seeing religious revivals around the world? Why is the fact of religious experience? It's almost as if you go to a village and 95% of those people in the village say, we know this guy named Bill. Why? Because we interact with him. We relate to him.
Yeah, this is a weird statement because religion reinforces itself by the mechanisms it uses. Like, it's not a surprise that religion is still around, since for part of that time, the religious people went around killing the non-religious people. It isn't a surprise it's still around because it contains within itself mechanisms to provide the ongoing support for itself.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't surprising.
Yeah, it makes me want to hit my irony spray, because he asks why religion is still around when he's one of the viral vectors continuing to spread that particular mental I don't want to say disease, because there actually is such a thing, but infection, I guess. It's really shitty thinking. And he's a spreader of it. He's one of the reasons it's still around.
And if you paid attention to Richard Dawkins, who you were kind of referring to earlier, he would know that memes spread like a virus and like an infection. They hang around and they evolve. That Christianity isn't the same meme as it was back in the day. And all I'm saying for meme is sort of ideas, ideologies, things like that. You know, it's kind of, it's not surprising that they hang around, but they change over time, which is exactly what Christianity has done. But I think that if one thing can be agreed on, that religion is very it's very it just doesn't go away. Religions die, but this like, people talk about the God-shaped hole, and I think there's something to that. We want to ascribe meaning to ourselves. There's this sort of want to put some answer where there is no answer, and I think that's where religion sort of reinforces itself, by preying on that. But something hanging around, and he's going to a popular argument, you know, like popularity argument. I think from what he's saying, all these people in the village believe they've had this interaction. It's a popularity argument.
Experience of him. 5 guys say we've never met Bill, and 3 of them say there is no Bill. The other 95% are making him up. Now, which is more likely? Is it likely that the 3% are right and the 95% are lying or hallucinating? Or is it more likely that the 95% are right and the other 3% just don't know the guy?
Does Dinesh not know how to do math? Can he not count to 100?
Well, maybe there's a percentage that say that it's Pete or something. I don't know, like instead of Bill. I don't know how he's it.
Maybe, but as to his point, there's an easy way to figure this out, Dinesh. You can actually investigate this.
Could someone please take a photo of Bill and show him to the people who are, you know, in doubt, or maybe, I don't know, introduce Bill to them? because every time
Oh.
we ask to meet Bill, we get saying, well, you can't see Bill, right? And you can't hear Bill exactly. You just have to feel that Bill exists in the village.
You have to trust in the Billness. No, the other 2%
Right.
are Bill.
Ooh, yeah, okay. But wouldn't Bill believe that Bill exists? This comes along that line of question, is God a theist? Because wouldn't
Yeah,
God
yeah.
believe in God? You
Does
know,
does he believe in himself?
right.
I mean, if you buy into Christianity like Dinesh does, then no, because Jesus believed he was a rabbi and that God was God, so he was a
Right.
theist in that sense. But he didn't believe in
Ooh.
himself in the way Christians believe in him.
Well, maybe he was religiously Jewish kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine, yeah, which would make sense.
It's a little bit of wordplay. It's less dishonest than what Dinesh does, but it still amuses me to occasionally say, "Hey, Jesus wasn't a Christian. He was Jewish,
But it's interesting how they will say, hey, you know, why wouldn't you believe this person exists when you're not saying, like, you're not even presenting the person, you're presenting the idea of the person and no actual evidence that they exist. Like, it's like someone, you know, convincing everyone they have an imaginary friend. It just, why would we present the guy? And plus, it's not even Bill like the same as us. It's like sort of saying, hey, there's this incredible millionaire that's a genius somewhere in this town, but you'll never get to see him. Like, it's not even, yeah. So I think it's a false analogy as well, because you're sort of making this character Bill as just another human, and that's not what God is.
Oh, that's why Dinesh is so highly paid, because he's stacking up the fallacies. Any apologist can whip out fallacies, but he's
Right.
building them up like a Jenga tower.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, like I said, I feel like, you know, just as a thing, I feel like he's sort of a bit slimy in the way that he operates, in my opinion. I dislike the way that he sort of approaches things.
Of religious experience in the world today, to simply write it off as a primitive explanation of why ancient man couldn't explain the thunder seems idiotically unrelated to the fact that religion serves current needs.
Look, I just used that analogy, and I think it's perfectly fair. I think that you know, it's because we thought at one point that thunder and lightning was caused by the gods, and it's because we didn't know. So we said, hey, we don't know, it must be the gods. When we investigate, we find out there's a cause behind it, and we say, well, it wasn't the gods at all. It's poignant because you're doing the same thing with this cell biology. You're saying, well, we don't know, so it must be a god. That's a better explanation. But it's like those people back there saying, well, you know, how could this electricity, or they didn't know what electricity was, but how could this destructive force just materialize from the sky? It's ridiculous to think it could just happen by itself. It must be Zeus. It's exactly the same argument. And I got a super chat from Farron Salas, who is an amazing guy. Thank you so much, Farron, for $4.99 US. Big fan, Mark. Not as much as me, but a fan nonetheless with a wink. Yeah, thanks. Bring me down to earth, buddy. No worries at all. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But yeah, this is the whole point. Like, I don't like people that say that, oh, saying that, comparing it with that is ridiculous. Is it? Because somebody in ancient Greece may have made exactly the same argument, you know, to Epicurus, say, who was sort of a, you know, gods aren't behind things, that things have other explanations. And someone would say to him, it's ridiculous to think that this just happens by itself. It must be Zeus that's causing this lightning to come down and blast the earth. Why else would it happen?
I can totally see Dinesh in a past life, you know, saying to Aristotle or any of them really, well, positing naturalism is ridiculous. Explain lightning then.
Right. It's not a bad analogy at all, because the arguments are essentially the same. You know, it's ridiculous to think that lightning just blasts the ground for no reason. It's obviously God punishing somebody, you know, hit somebody's store. It must be the gods. It's not a bad analogy. It's perfectly reasonable.
Current wants. So religion is not the problem. God is not the problem. God is, in fact, the answer to the problem. Thank you.
Can you demonstrate that?
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing about Presup, is the entire point of Presup isn't just to declare I'm right at the beginning and you know, I'm not going to hear any arguments. It's by begging the question from the outset, you don't even have to, at least you think, you don't even have to demonstrate your claim, because by presupping, you're assuming your conclusion.
Well, he's not technically doing presupp. He said he'd make presuppositions, and I get what he's saying. He's more using a hypothesis to account for the facts, basically, which isn't technically presuppositionalism. He kind of touched on it by saying the moral argument, sort of, so where do morals come from, if not God? But the fact that he's using sort of saying, hey, the facts are better accounted for by God than by sort of naturalistic explanations is evidentialism. It's not presuppositionalism, because presuppositionalism basically says that morals come from God. We're going to presuppose that, and then moves onwards from there. It doesn't question whether God or a naturalistic explanation is better. It starts at that's where it comes from, right? So slight difference, but he's not actually using presuppositionalist arguments. He's using evidentialist arguments. He's using presupposition the way you would hypothesis, right? So does the God hypothesis account for things better, or does a naturalistic hypothesis account for things better?
Sure, and accounting for things is great, but you know, once you've got your hypothesis and you say, oh, it explains this, now you got to test it, and he can't even get to the testing phase, let alone overcome that
absolutely.
hurdle.
Yep, absolutely. No, I agree. And he's done nothing like, so all of it really is a God of the gaps, but we don't even have the gaps, like sort of, so morality, for instance, is one of the gaps that he's trying to point out, but sort of evolutionary process and survival mechanisms within societies can account for that perfectly fine. So he doesn't really have a gap. He's just asserting a gap and then trying to give a God to fill it. So he's kind of, you know, doing fallacies on two fronts. He's a two-front fallacy man. He's not only is he doing God of the gaps, but he doesn't have a gap to put the God in. He's just asserting the gap, which is kind of funny.
I love the Monty Python God because he's literally in a gap.
Yeah. And he's a two-dimensional being. That's also
yes, that too.
Yeah.
The symbolism is fantastic.
Oh yeah. Rebuttal time from Hitch.
I never hear Dinesh doing that without thinking what a wonderful Muslim he would make. You try telling 100 people in Saudi Arabia that you don't think the Prophet Muhammad really heard those voices. You're going to be really outvoted. And yes, Dinesh, I have noticed there are religious revivals going on. Pay a lot of attention to them. I don't find them as welcome, perhaps, as you do. And on your detective hypothesis, don't you think there's...
Yeah, and the religious revivals always seem to pair up with right-wing sort of fundamentalist revivals. Sort of the rise of fascism again has been seen now, and it's disturbing. And it is no coincidence that the rise of fascism goes hand in hand with the rise of fundamentalist religion. That's not a coincidence, because one of the sort of things that make fascism is the religion working for the benefit of the state. That is one of the hallmarks of fascism. It's not a coincidence.
Something to be said for considering unfalsifiability when constructing a hypothesis. For example, Albert Einstein staked his reputation. He said, if I'm wrong about this, then there will not be an eclipse at a certain time of day and month and year off the west coast of Africa, and I will look a fool. But if I'm right, there will be one. And people foregather thinking he can't be that smart, and he was. Professor J.B.S. Haldane used to be asked, well, what would shake your faith in evolution? This was when it was much more controversial than it is now, and I'm impressed to find that Dinesh believes in intelligent design, which really does require, I would think, a leap of faith, but there it is. Haldane said, well, show me rabbits' bones in the Jurassic layer, and I'll give up. Now, can you think of any religious spokesman you've ever heard who would tell you in advance what would disprove their hypothesis? Of course you can't, because it's unfalsifiable. And we were all taught, weren't we, by Professor Karl Popper, that unfalsifiability in a theory is a test not of its strength, but of its weakness. So you can't beat it. The church used to say, no.
Yeah, the more I read of Popper, the more impressed I am. Like, Karl Popper is an excellent person to read if you do. If you do like philosophy and you do want to sort of look at the philosophy of science, Karl Popper is amazing. Yeah.
He's the nitpicky detail, can't let small shit go part of my brain wants to point out Einstein didn't predict the eclipse off the coast of Africa. He predicted that the stars behind the sun would be deflected by the sun's gravity, which would be visible during the eclipse, a different amount than Newtonian gravity would predict the starlight would be deflected. And he turned out to be right, which in the grand scheme of things, even though it's a less spectacular prediction,
It's
predicting
still
an
more
eclipse versus
specific.
way
Yeah.
more specific.
Yeah.
Shoot, there was another thing I wanted to say, but I got the more minor point out, so there's that.
Well, let me know if it occurs to you, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a good question to bring up whenever you're in a debate or whenever you're sort of engaging with theists, is what falsifies this hypothesis? How can we tell that this is wrong? Because always what we're looking for, and there's a few sort of paradigms that explain this, like Russell's teapot, for instance. You can't falsify the claim there's a teapot around Jupiter kind of thing. What would falsify the God hypothesis? And as he referred to, Karl Popper says that unfalsifiability is absolutely useless. You can never something that's unfalsifiable is not something that you should even consider, because there's billions of things you can make up that are unfalsifiable.
Yeah, that was the thing, was the unfalsifiability. That actually came up on Ger's stream earlier today. Rebecca from Bread of Life happened to be over, and a certain archangel.
Oh, it was Ger's? Oh, well, I'm glad I missed it then. Okay.
Yeah. An archangel was by and asked Rebecca if perchance aliens came to Earth and professed that they too had heard the word of God and it was Islam that was true, would that shake her faith? And she said, well, no, probably not, because that, whatever, who cares?
Wow. Yeah.
However, she did say, if they came and said, haha, we fooled you, we faked Christianity, there never was an empty tomb, it was a projection or something, that might shake her faith. So to her credit, there is something that would knock her off that perch. But I mean, if aliens say we have the same religion as you, except it's this one specific religion and not yours, I don't know. As an atheist, if aliens said, yes, Islam is correct, I might be swayed. I'd be like, how the fuck do they know about Islam?
Right. I would certainly want to find out, like, why they're the same, and if they're exactly the same, I would say that would shake me a little. I don't know about Rebecca, but that would shake me. Then again, just aliens would shake me. So I guess that would be fine. So Daryl Frost, thank you, Daryl. Richard Feynman said, if your model theory is so vague, any evidence can be accepted to confirm that model. Yeah, and that's what flat earthers do. It's basically, don't give any, like, because when you do a debate with flat earthers, they will not give you any kind of, how wide is the earth? Don't know. How, what's behind the wall? Don't know. How does this, they want to make it as vague as possible, because once they start getting pinned down in details, we can then check to see if these details are right and falsified. And they don't want to do that. So and God is the ultimate vagary. I mean, the amount of people I've spoken to that can't even explain what God is. Like, oh, it's a spirit. Well, what's a spirit? oh, it's something supernatural. Well, what's supernatural? Like, what is this thing? And then they usually have to, sort of say not natural, not physical, and they're explaining things in what it isn't, which is strange.
Didn't allow evolution. Indeed, instead, he hid the bones in the rocks to test our faith. That didn't work out too well. So now they say, now we know about it. It proves how incredibly clever he was all along. It's an infinitely elastic airbag. And there's no argument.
An infinitely elastic airbag. That is a good description. It will just, it's an explanation that can stretch in any direction to encompass any fact ever found. Well done, Hitch. Well done.
That I can bring or anyone else can bring against it, and that's what should make you suspicious. Then a question for Dinesh. I know I'm supposed to be answering them as well as asking them, but it does intrigue me when I debate with religious people. He announced, I have his words, he was going to talk without reference to revelation, scripture, or scriptural authority. Now, why, ask yourselves then, I'll ask you, why is that? Why do I never come up against someone who says, I'll tell you why I'm religious, because I think that Jesus of Nazareth is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except by him. And if you'll believe on this, you'll be given eternal life. I'd be impressed if people would sometimes say that. Why do the religious people so often feel they must say, no, we don't, but that's all sort of metaphorical? In what sense are they then religious? You'll notice that Dinesh talked about the operations of the divine and the creator only in the observable natural order. That's what used to be called the deist position. It was the position held by skeptics like Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson by the end of the 18th century. It was as far as anyone could see before Darwin and before Einstein. There appeared to be evidence of design in the universe, but there was no evidence of divine intervention in it. Very important point. The deist may say, and I would have to say, it cannot be disproved that there was a first cause and that it was godly. That cannot be disproved. It can only be argued that there's no evidence for it. But the deists, having established that position, if they have, has all their work still ahead of them to show that there is a God who cares about us, even knows we exist, takes sides in our little tribal wars, cares who we sleep with and in what position.
There's problems with iron chariots. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, it's most fascinating.
Yeah.
Cares what we eat and on what day of the week. Arbitrates matters of this kind. That's the conceited, that's the endless human wish to believe that we have parents who want to look out for us and help us not to grow up or get out of the way. And so it surprises me that there are no professions of real religious faith ever made on these occasions. Now,
just to say that Dr. Tapioca Weasel, 4 months, a member, chat, you're awesome mostly. No, it's entirely awesome. It's entirely awesome. Maybe, awesomely bad at times, but come on now. We can't all be perfect like you. Wow. I think Tap's expecting a little bit too much from my chat, to be honest with him. And you may disagree, but I think chat's pretty good. Yeah, pretty good. You're half decent too, Dr. Tap. Yeah, half. Just which half, Al? Is that the top half or the bottom half? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, but I like what Hitch is putting down.
Yeah,
because that's this whole thing, like, he's not wrong. Like, they all do this.
Yeah.
William Lane Craig is all,
Yeah.
here's a reason, in fairness, in his debate with Hitchens, his fifth reason was, I feel the Holy Spirit, and wonderful, whatever.
Personal
But
revelation, yeah.
They always want to, like, look at the real universe and say, it's best explained by God. A universe that just so happens looks identical to what a universe with no God would look like.
Yeah.
If you want to use the universe to demonstrate God, you should be able to show things that could not happen in nature, like us living on the surface of the sun or something. Like, we only live where it's possible for us to live. In a supernatural universe, we should be able to live where it is not possible for us to live.
And why all of the empty space and black holes and stuff? Why have a universe billions and billions, just an unfathomable distance from anywhere, just for one tiny little speck in it to be the place that you're going to live your life and die. I think he's also getting at these people make claims sort of way beyond what they're willing to defend. And it sort of reminds me of something called the Mott and Bailey fallacy. So you're sort of claiming that God was Jesus and he rose from the dead, and all of these claims that are very, very specific. And then when you get challenged, you retreat to, well, some kind of God must exist because of this, and this. Oh, and some guy called Ember, who's been a member for 4 months. This chat is amazing with teriyaki and mushrooms. Nom 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 nom.
Nom nom
Get out,
nom.
get out your woks, people. Yeah, no, this chat is amazing. I gotcha. But yeah, but they retreat to this, like as Hitchens said, this deistic idea of God. Which is kind of, I don't know. It sort of reeks of, well, you've made a whole bunch of claims, but your defense of it is so vague. Because if you start, like, again, like the flat earth thing, if you start saying, hey, God is this thing that did this and this happened, then you've got to start to defend that. If you make it as vague as possible, you can just account for all these things we don't know. It's just the more vague the God, the easier he is to fit in a gap somewhere.
I suppose I should then say what my own method in this is, since I was challenged on that point. Take the two figures of Jesus of Nazareth and Socrates. I believe Jesus of Nazareth operates on the fringe of mythology and prehistory. I don't think it's absolutely certainly established there was such a person, or that he made those pronouncements, or that he was the son of God, or the son of a virgin, or any of these things. And I would like myself to concede that we only know of the work of Socrates through second-hand sources, in the same way,
Plato.
second or third-hand. Quite impressive ones in some cases, from Plato's Apology, but it can't be demonstrated to me that Socrates ever walked the streets of Athens.
That's 5 minutes.
How many?
That's 5.
That's fine. But just quickly, though. If it could be shown to a believing Christian, the grave of Jesus opened and the body of him found and the resurrection disproved, if that could be archaeologically done, for the sake of argument, it would presumably be a disaster for you. You have to think, then we're alone. Then how are we going to know right from wrong? What can we do? I maintain with Socrates that, on the contrary, the moral problems and ethical problems and other dilemmas that we have would be exactly the same as they are. What are our duties to each other? How can we build the just city? How should we think? How can we face the possibility of our loneliness? How can we do right? These questions would remain exactly as they are, and as they do. And so all that is necessary is to transcend the superstitious, transcend the mythical, and accept the responsibility, take it on ourselves, that no one can do this for us. And I would hope that in a great university, that thought might carry the day. Thank you.
So Hitchens referenced a book that he sometimes does. He didn't mention it by name this time. It was called When It Was Dark, and it's from the turn of the 20th century, where archaeologists found Jesus's tomb. Holy crap. And what's more surprising is they found Jesus's corpse still inside it, proving he did not rise, and the story was made up.
Right.
And according to the story, the world just went to shit. Like, overnight, everybody just went, oh, well, there's no morals then. Even the non-Christian parts of the world, for some reason. And it was pretty ridiculous. But it was still a compelling story at the time, because a lot of people really believe that without Christianity, there's no morality or anything else, no law. No,
I don't see Japan being particularly affected by that. I don't see China breaking down because there's no Christianity. I think they'll just go on as normal. Christianity is such a small section of those countries.
Yeah, it really is. It's very puzzling why the author did that, and the author resolved it by spoiler alert for a book that's over 120 years old, but whatever.
Okay.
It turned out that the corpse of Jesus was a hoax, and once it was revealed, everything went back to normal. But what Hitchens is getting at is that's really silly. Even believers wouldn't suddenly start rioting like our civilizational part of our brain, the social contract just switched off, and we just went the movie where people kill each other,
The Purge.
I'm having aphasia again.
The Purge.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
The
we just went
Purge,
Purge. No, obviously not, because our morality is actually secular, even if we deny that fact.
I think that if that ever happened, that churches would do very well for a short amount of time. That that they would have people going to them and going, how could this possibly happen? I think that people would say, hey, it is a hoax and it is fake and it's, Satan planting it there. I think that people would take more sick days for a little bit as they sort of coped with it. But I don't think things would fall apart. I don't think anything would change. And like I said,
I
Japan,
think you hit the nail on the head, Mark. I really think most believers would simply deny the evidence. They'd say, nope, don't believe it.
Probably, yeah. I mean, it's certainly the ones that we run into on YouTube that are like, I mean, I'm thinking of like people like the Proverbs guy who sort of says, "Oh, the Smithsonian destroyed evidence of giants," kind of thing, which was a story lifted from a fake newspaper called the World History Now or something. That was a joke, like The Onion. Like, he actually believes that, even though I've shown him that story comes from a fake newspaper for comedy. Like, it's baffling why he thinks that still, but that's what they would think. They would absolutely believe that. People like Hovind, he would never believe that they found the corpse of Jesus, like, ever. That is something that he would deny. But I think churches would have a problem with because most people aren't like I've got to keep reminding myself that most Christians aren't like the fundamentalists we meet on YouTube from like Dinosaur Adventureland and Proverbs guy. And most Christians aren't like that. They're very they don't get that wrapped up in it. But I think it'd separate into two. One lot that are sort of like, well, what do we do now? And just keep living their lives, and another group that would deny it up and down.
I think there'd be
But it'd
another
definitely be a
faction
problem.
who would simply jump to the next religion over. Maybe they'd become Jews, maybe they'd become Muslims. Who knows?
Muslims,
But
maybe.
there is that group of people who they want to pretend that what they believe is true, so they couldn't continue to be Christians, but they like to keep that security blanket of having all the
Right.
answers.
And I mean, there are those people in the segment of people that, if reality disagrees with their doctrine or their dogma, they believe the dogma. Reality has no effect on their religion at all, which is just, I mean, it's baffling to me. I don't understand it. All right, Dinesh, what do you got?
Somewhat like the mosquito in the nudist colony, I'm trying to decide where to begin.
That's a weird thing.
Yeah, I actually found it a little bit funny. I mean, it wasn't bad,
Yeah, I get
it sounded rehearsed, but it wasn't bad.
I don't know. It's a weird image to invoke.
Yeah, especially at a university.
Yeah, I don't know.
Doc Dino for $5. Thank you, Doc. Some Christians already deny climate change, the old Earth, evolution, fossils, modern medicine, and more. Why would they believe we found Jesus? Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. They wouldn't. Because climate change, old Earth, evolution, fossils, and modern medicine, and more is less harmful to their religion than Jesus. And I mean, like, you've also got to consider that, like, people like these preachers, like somebody once said, it's hard to convince somebody of the sort of the untruth of what they're saying if their livelihood depends on it being true.
Well, I wonder what would happen if we ran the experiment in reverse. Like, instead of finding the corpse of Jesus, Jesus returned. And of course, I'm saying hypothetically, War of the Worlds style, what if type of thing. Are there people who would believe it despite the fact there's no evidence?
People that would believe it in spite the fact there's no evidence. But if Jesus actually returned, there'd be evidence, right?
I would imagine so. I mean, the whole host of angels and trumpets and all the rulers of all the kingdoms gathering to bend the knee and kiss the ring and all that crap. But like, if you did a War of the Worlds style broadcast, like a radio broadcast that's clearly tagged as being a fictional thing, but still did like a news report of Jesus has returned. This is unbelievable. He's descended from the clouds with a host of angels onto the plains of Megiddo. You just did the whole thing. How many people would just believe it?
Well, you'd think it would be Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that sort of there'd be a contingent of Muslims that wouldn't believe it. They absolutely would not, right? Yeah, I don't know. Is that supposed to be pronounced Jesus? I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced. I'm sorry. I'm illiterate. I'm sorry.
English is hard, especially when it's not English.
English is stupid. English is such a stupid language. I mean, some of the rules in it are so dumb. Like, what's this I before E, except after C, except when the sound is A, I think it is, except when the sound is I before B, except after C, except when the sound is A, yeah, like
Neighbor or way.
neighbor, yeah. And there's exceptions to that.
There are more
as well.
exceptions. Somebody went through a
Yeah.
dictionary and added them up. There's more exceptions to that rule than words that
Right.
follow that rule, even as overcomplicated as it is.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's such a silly, silly language, like seriously. Yeah, and homophones, homonyms, I think it is. They're words that sound the same but are spelt differently. Yeah, all of that stuff. It's silly. It's really dumb. Yeah, all right. Well, yeah. I don't know what we were talking about. I was ranting about English being hard. I blame Doc Dino.
Yeah. We were on a tangent from another tangent from another tangent.
Oh, it's tangentception again. That's going to be one of those days. I'm glad it's yesterday right now.
Yep.
I might begin by noting that in my opening statement, I offered a kind of a challenge to Christopher Hitchens. I mentioned anomalous features of the world as it is and of the evolutionary explanation, and offered to him the chance to offer rival theories that might do better than the God explanation. I just want to note that he has offered none. Instead, what he has offered is the idea that science is based on verifiability, but religion not. This, I think, is in fact not true.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? Are you going to go to dark matter again? Homophone. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't get that.
And he said no one's ever given him an example of it, and I'm about to give him two.
Cool.
Ancient Hebrews asserted, uniquely, by the way, of all religions, that God made the universe out of nothing. Now, incidentally, the idea that God or gods made the universe is a very old idea.
God, according to the Hebrew scriptures, God did not make the universe out of nothing. God made the universe out of water. The water was there before God showed up.
Okay, so what about the Old Testament? That sort of ex nihilo, isn't it?
No, it's in the beginning, yada yada yada. The Spirit hovered over the waters and parted the waters from the waters to create the world.
Well, the beginning, hang on a sec, I'm just getting it now. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. So it depends on how you interpret that, but it can be heavens and earth is sort of the universe, everything is how I've usually been told they're interpreting it. So I don't think the waters were supposed to be there originally. I think that they claim that God created those as well.
I think that's the first instance. I always confuse exegesis and eisegesis, but when you read your own interpretation into the script rather than what it just says on its own, and I think that's one of those. That's projecting a meaning into there, because you could say he created the heavens and the earth, and that gave him the water that he then had to work with, or you could say, and I believe scholars would agree with me on this one, that it's saying this is the process of how God created the heaven and the earth. He started by existing over the waters, and then his first act of creation was to separate the waters from the waters.
I think it's exegesis and exogesis. I think are the two things from memory. Is it, or is it something else? Or is eisegesis? What's the opposite? It's the exegesis. So that's the one of interpreting from the Bible or your holy text. I think there's an opposite, which is to put something in, kind of thing. Hang on, let me look it up. So there's exegesis, to draw out, and then eisegesis, to draw in, basically.
I know they have so many very specific field-oriented terms, like hermeneutics. Like there's so many terms that only apply to study of the
Right,
book.
right.
But
I know.
it'd be like, for example, I could say, this is the account of how Mark built this house. Mark started with lumber and began to hammer. So you could interpret it as saying, you built the house and then you took lumber and began to hammer after there was already a house. Or you could say, the first sentence is setting the stage of what's about to happen, and then I'm going to tell you step by step what happened.
Right. Yeah,
But
so
it's not super important. It's
okay.
In every other religion, God or gods fashioned the universe out of some other stuff. God is a kind of carpenter. He took the stuff of the universe and he made life and he made man. But the Hebrews said, no, there was nothing. And then there was a universe.
Actually, that's not entirely true. I mean, I believe the Greek starts with chaos, who was a being of themselves. Like they were the being, was chaos, and that's all that would existed. So I don't think that's true at all.
Yeah, I think if you take any faith back far enough, you get to either nothing or the equivalent of nothing from a mortal perspective. Like you can say in the Norse religion, Odin killed whoever the fuck, the big old titan, and fashioned the earth out of his corpse. But that's not
Ymir,
the very beginning.
the frost giant Ymir.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm fuzzy on the details. But but
that
that's
was
not the
only
very beginning.
But that was only Midgar. That wasn't the beginning. I think it's Ymir, Ymir. Yeah, a giant that was created. So that sort of fashioned the world, but the gods existed before the world in Norse mythology, right?
Yeah, exactly. The other realms already existed, and there's older stories. The mythology gets fuzzier because we only have the rune stones to work with, and they aren't complete. But TLDR is there's mythology of how the other realms got created long before that, before Odin even showed up.
Right. Yeah.
And I want to suggest that modern science has proved this to be 100% correct. If you go to an introductory physics class at Notre Dame, you will learn that as a direct consequence of the Big Bang, not only did the universe have a beginning, not only did all the matter have a beginning, but space and time also had a beginning. In other words, first there was nothing, no space, no time. And then there was a universe with...
No.
We've covered this one a gazillion times too. TLDR, no, there was no nothing. There was never a point at which there was nothing. We don't even have a definition for what nothing is. We don't know what's outside the universe. It might be nothing, whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean, but it might not be. We don't know. So there is no part of science, particularly cosmology and especially cosmogony, that posits the universe just poofed out of nothing. Absolutely
so
not.
that comes from a word on Lawrence Krauss's book that creationists have made work, probably the hardest any word has ever worked in the history of English, because it every single time it's like, you think the universe came from nothing, and it's like, that's not what he meant. For the 50 billionth time, that is not what Lawrence Krauss meant. It's not what we believe. Stop straw manning what we believe. Bad, D'Souza. Bad. I know that Lawrence Krauss used it as a title of his book, The Universe from Nothing. It like that one word has done so much work for them. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
space and time.
Yeah.
Suddenly the Christian concept of eternity, of a God being outside of space and time, which for centuries was scientifically unintelligible, is now not only coherent, but writing alongside the most cutting-edge
It's
discoveries.
still unintelligible.
Yeah.
It's completely incoherent. What does it mean to exist? To exist, you have a location in space and you are within time. To say something is transcendent beyond the universe, outside of space and time, as far as I can tell, means does not exist.
Well, so exist is hard, right? Exist is a hard word to pin down what it actually means. Usually what I'm talking about when I say something exists is that it has a causal relationship with something else, right? So any kind of causal relationship, you say it exists. But if you take away time, how can you have any causal relationship to anything? So the same problem. I'm not sure about space. Because you can say that the law exists, right? The law exists. You know what I mean? Like it's written down. I'm not sure it has something in space though. When you're talking about the law, it's sort of a concept, but it still exists. But if you take away time, it has no causal relationship. Like breaking the law, if there's no time, nothing happens to you because there's no time, right? So, it still doesn't work under my definition of exists or yours kind of thing. And I don't think it works under anybody's definition of exists.
Yeah, it's incoherent nonsense, and it's a stopgap, and it's a God of the gap stopgap, because that's not what his religion has always said. That's what his religion came up with as a fallback position after all the other things it had said had already been disproven, because those were falsifiable and got falsified. Like God lives in heaven, God lives in the clouds, God lives atop the mountains, God's on the other side of the moon, God's in deep space. Everywhere we've looked, oh, well, we can't find him because he's not even in the fucking universe. Well, if he's not in the universe, then what's the point? Maybe there is something outside the universe. Maybe it even created the universe. But if it's outside the universe, the entirety of time, space, and reality we interact with, what does it fucking matter?
Yeah, and the whole idea that this is where you get to the unfalsifiability. You could say anything is outside the universe. You could say it's a mystic pizza or some kind of magical leprechaun outside the universe, because no one can check to see if that is true or not. And that's where the unfalsifiability comes in. If it's unfalsifiable, it's not even worth considering, because you've set it up in such a way that you cannot find out if it is in fact not true. It's pointless even thinking about. Oh, thanks, Kentucky Atheist. See you later, mate. Take care.
Yeah, I'll since my car is broken, I should be able to catch you. KA's show, for those of you who are joining us late, he's doing a 500 subscriber stream on his channel at 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. So yeah, I'll catch you then.
I'll try and make it. If I can stay up, I stay up. If I don't, I don't. But that's really late. But I'll try. I'll try to drop in, because 500's a great milestone, mate. Fantastic effort. Absolutely. No, definitely worth celebrating. Definitely worth celebrating. But yeah, this whole idea of just being outside of the universe, it's just okay. Now show us how we can check to see if that's the case. And I mean, even if we could look outside the universe, I've got a feeling that just say, hey, it's outside of the cosmos, the extra dimensions of the cosmos. It's outside of that. And then if ever we could, there's always another unknown to put your God into. So why are we bothering sort of taking these people's word for it?
Yeah, it's the invisible gardener, except much, much more invisible than that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
In astronomy. The ancient Hebrews and the Old Testament predicts that the people of Israel, after being dispersed, would return. There would be, if you will, a reuniting of the state of Israel. Until the 1940s, this was a possibility historically so preposterous that if someone had actually suggested it, they would meet with derisive laughter. And yet it has in fact happened, just as the Bible said it would. Now, these are not
because
theories.
People intentionally sought out to fulfill that prophecy. It's not like God intervened. People like Dinesh were like, hey, we should do that, because then the prophecy will be fulfilled. It does. You don't get supernatural points if mortals did it on purpose with knowledge of the prophecy, working to fulfill it
Yeah.
in a naturalistic way. No supernatural The fuck, Dinesh? Ugh.
Yeah. People knew about it. They went and did it. They got a lot of support for it because it's in the prophecy. It's not rocket science. It's just like they went out in order to do exactly what they said they were going to do. Like it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a
Some of these-
fortune cookie once that said, you will meet someone new today. So I went out and found a stranger and said hello and got to know. Oh, the cookie was right. No, I
Right.
fucking did
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that may have been instigated. It's self-fulfilled prophecy as a thing, because that might have said, oh well, if I'm going to meet somebody, you're going to go out and meet somebody who's going to become important in your life. You're like, well, I better go out and meet somebody. That could be the actual thing that made you do it, right? It's self-fulfilled prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you know that there was nothing and there was a universe? They didn't do any scientific experiments. They basically said, God told me. But I'm saying that if you look at that as a prophecy or as a factual claim about the world, we now know 2,000 years later that it is in its essence correct. The reason that I can't go on like this is because religion addresses different types.
Really? We know that it's correct. Really? Was the Bible correct about, the water being there before the earth? Was it correct about the earth being there before the sun and light? Did the sun come along later? Because we know that's false.
Yeah, the sun came after the trees, obviously. In the Bible.
Yes.
But if you want to stick with just straight up prophecy, let's talk about that frickin' multi-metal statue nonsense. That's a fun one. It's about as specific as Notre Dame. Yeah, I think it was one of Daniel's prophecies. The king had a dream. He demanded his wise men tell him not just what his dream meant, but what the dream was. And none of them could read minds, so none of them fucking knew. And then Daniel comes along and goes, oh, you had a dream about a statue made of many metals. The head, I'm going to get it wrong, so forgive me, but the general rundown is the head is gold and the arms are silver and the belly is bronze and the legs are steel and the feet are metal and stone mixed, something like that. And then he says, so the head, the gold, that's your kingdom, your majesty, because you reign supreme and yada yada. But the arms, those are silver, they take up more space, and the next empire that comes after your kingdom will be not as good as yours, but take up more land. It'll be bigger. And then and he goes on and interprets them and basically talks about 5 different kingdoms. And then historians come along later and be like, well, he was right, because after him, there was the Persian Empire, and then Alexander the Great, and then Rome, and then the Ottomans, and so it was clearly true, except there were like a dozen empires. So
right.
Which 5 do you pick to be represented by the statue? And it turns out that prophecy was actually written 400 years after the fact, when 5 empires had already risen and fallen after that king died. So
yeah,
yay, go prophecy.
Well, my favorite is the city of Tyre or Tyre, which is sort of a Middle Eastern city in Turkey now. That sort of, when Nebuchadnezzar was attacking it, they sort of said, "Oh, well, you have wounded God, O Tyre, and you're going to be cast down by Nebuchadnezzar and smashed." And because basically the Babylonians were really their rivals, kind of thing. And so they sort of made this prophecy of, oh, you have angered God, so Nebuchadnezzar will trample Tyre and crush its stones, and it's going to fall into the sea, and it will only become a place for fishermen to cast its nets, and it will never rise again, it'll be dead forever, kind of thing. And the hilarious thing is that Tyre exists today, and it's a city, like it's a city of like 1 million people or something. Like it's a flourishing city. And they sort of have said, oh well, they mean the ruins offshore, and it's like, oh come on now, it's a city. And Nebuchadnezzar never crushed it. It was actually Alexander the Great who came later, and they sort of say, oh, but he meant Alexander. No, he didn't. He was talking specifically about Nebuchadnezzar. And the funny thing is that after that, there's a prophecy that Nebuchadnezzar would turn north and go to Egypt and lay waste to all of Egypt, kind of thing, as sort of a consolation prize for not taking down Tyre. And he failed on that one too. Like he did some damage to Egypt, but he didn't crush Egypt like it was prophesied. Like, so 2 prophecies very soon in a row.
Well, you know why? The Egyptians also had iron chariots.
Well, yeah, possibly. But these prophecies are hilarious because no matter how much they fail, they always find some way to go, oh, but if you think about it like this, and it's like, why would a prophecy from a god need to have these roundabout explanations to make it work? Like the prophecies of Notre Dame kind of thing, right? Like, oh,
yeah,
so if you
freaking
interpret it
Edgar
like
Casey was
this-
more specific.
Right.
He was like, you'll find the ruins of an ancient, or you'll find what you think are the ruins of an ancient civilization in the Bahamas off the coast of an
Yeah.
island named Bimini. And what, 60, 70 years later, we find the Bimini Road, which isn't actually the ruins of a city. It's just a stone outcropping that looks roughly straightish. But it happened, it's near Bimini. So Casey is more accurate than the fucking Bible.
Yeah.
Clearly, he's a prophet and we're worshiping the wrong God, I guess.
Well, when you're looking at prophecies, you really have to look at how specific they are, how relevant they are, whether the information can be obtained any other way. And the thing is that with Tyre, that if you look at the historical context, it would have been a safe bet that a massive empire like Babylon would just run roughshod over Tyre. Like it you know, and basically they assaulted the castle, and eventually Tyre kind of they didn't surrender. They kind of became a vassal of them, kind of thing. So they weren't thrown down and they weren't destroyed. So it's kind of like, why is it that we should pay attention to these other ones that, you know, as you pointed out, some of them they actively worked at fulfilling them. When you know, it's what is it, the Texas sharpshooter? You count all the hits and you just ignore all the misses in there.
Yeah, and to borrow one of my favorite phrases from Ken Ham, if you don't believe one part of the magic book, why should you believe any of the rest of it?
Right. And you know, it makes us laugh about the inerrant word of God, you know, because for something inerrant, it's got a whole load of errors in it. Like that's yeah.
Questions and scientific questions. Here are 3. Here we are flung into the world. One question we have is, what's the purpose of our life? Or why are we here? Or where are we going? What happens to us after we die? Here are the scientific answers to those 3 questions. Don't have a clue, don't have a clue, and don't have a clue. We are no closer to answering those.
So if you've got an answer, does that make you more right?
If you
No.
make up an answer, does it make it more correct?
Yeah. Like we don't
Like-
base whether an answer is correct on whether we have an answer or not. You know, you can sort of say, hey, why did people riot? And somebody says, hey, they just decided that they didn't like the color of the paint. It's a reason. Does it make it more right? No.
Yeah. I mean, we could answer all of those things, not completely, but we could give answers for all of those, but that's not the point. The point is that I don't know is honest and making shit up is not. And made up bullshit is not a good reason to believe anything.
Yeah. I mean, if this is the thing, like if you want the first answer you're given, great. But you'll have a better chance to be correct if you say, I don't know until I have sufficient evidence to justify it. And they don't. They certainly don't. It's just that that's what they want to believe, because they would rather believe in something than acknowledging that we don't know something, which is a terrible state of affairs. How do you get the correct answer if you're not willing to acknowledge that you don't know the answer in the first place? How is that possible?
Question scientifically than we were since the time of the Babylonians. So what is wrong in looking to religion to supply explanations in a domain where science is utterly inert, inarticulate, and in fact mute?
We don't know it's correct. And everybody in religion has different answers for it, and they currently fight over it. This is the problem, because when you go, well, this answer is correct no matter what, because I don't like having no answer, and somebody else is saying, well, I believe the opposite because I don't like having an answer, you inevitably get two groups of people fighting over an answer that neither of them can demonstrate. Ugh, D'Souza. He's like a walking logical fallacy, like seriously.
He's fallacied so much, he's built up such a pile of fallacies, he has completely vanished behind the time-space curvature of his fallaciousness.
He's the black hole of fallacies. Okay, gotcha. So any fallacies of sufficient mass can distort space-time. Yeah, no, I got it. And his suit's very shiny. It's like distracting me. It's very shiny.
You can't just say that if you understand the ballistics of plate tectonics, you understand purpose. It would be as if my dad took me on his...
Did he say
the
ballistics?
plate tectonics have a purpose? Well, ballistics, I guess that could be applied. I mean, ballistics is the study of force and motion, right?
I thought it was I don't know. It's probably not important, and
Yeah.
I may be mistaken about the exact definition. It just struck me as a really weird phrase to put there, but yeah, also purpose, and I'm starting to get one of those Doc Dino headaches, like, because there's so many layers of nonsense going on. Like you said, if you take another step back, not only are you dealing with this particular nonsense, but there's other nonsense, and how are we to tell which nonsense is true, if any?
Yeah. And bye, John. It's good to see you, mate. Sydney Raptor is on his way out to work. Good to see you. Don't work too hard. Yeah, it's this whole like I'm not afraid to admit to what I don't know, and that is a lot. That's a whole bunch. I don't need a god to fill in the blanks for me. I would rather find the answers. Ugh. Grayson says ballistics refers specifically to projectiles in flight. Okay.
That's what I thought.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not sure about ballistics, like plates being ballistic plates. I have no idea. Maybe he's talking about like ballistic plates, like
Oh,
armor
hydroplate theory.
plates.
on his knee and gave me a spanking, and Christopher Hitchens goes, don't think he's angry with you. If you only understood the ballistics of the cane, you would have a full explanation of what's going on. Or on the other hand, if I put a pot of tea on the kettle and began to boil it, Hitchens can't say, well, if I tell you about you say, what's going on here? Well, the scientific explanation is that water, when heated, the molecules expand, the temperature rises, but there's another explanation. Dinesh wants to have a cup of tea.
What? Dinesh wanting to have a cup of tea is not what causes it to boil.
Right.
Like, you wouldn't need if that were what the cause, you wouldn't need to heat it. You could just I wish, and therefore it happens. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, Dinesh?
Yeah, no, I've got no idea, because it's sort of like, well, why does the water boil? Because he wants a cup of tea. That's not why the water boils. Like you're mistaking intentionality for the physical operation of it, or the mechanical operation of it. Like, you're trying to say, hey, everything has an intentionality. No, not everything has an intentionality. There's no intentionality we can see of, like, a rock rolling down and causing an avalanche. Well, what was the intention of it? It's a freaking rock, dude. What do you expect from it? For it to have a life goal? What are you expecting?
I wonder if he read Spinoza and thought, that stone really does have agency over the direction it's been thrown.
Maybe. Who knows? That's so weird.
So explanations work at more than one level. And finally, Christopher asks, why argue this way? Well, we know about presenting the case the other way. In fact, you get it in church, or you get it in synagogue, or you get it every Sunday. The argument from the Bible, the argument from authority. I know it's a useless argument to use in a secular setting, especially when debating with an atheist. If I say, I believe in Jesus because the book of Matthew says this, or the Gospel of Luke says that, he's going to say, well, who cares what the Gospel of Luke says? I don't accept the authority of the Bible to adjudicate the matter. So we are at a state in our culture.
Yeah, well, I mean, sure, but you'd be more honest. Because, like, William Lane Craig doesn't believe in God because of all of these arguments he makes. I don't think Dinesh does either. I think it's a matter of faith. That's what I think. I don't know.
I think the money's too good, but these aren't mutually exclusive things.
Well, that's true.
In which we have to use rational arguments if we are trying to communicate in secular venues. So here we are at a university. What could be more appropriate than to address these arguments in the vocabulary of reason? Christopher wants me to fling the Bible at him so he can then claim the high ground of science and reason. What flummoxes him is when I use science and reason itself to torpedo his arguments. That's when...
Oh, you torpedoed nothing, mate. It wasn't even a toy boat. Like, let's face it. You were throwing nothing. Like, all you
But
did
he
is show that you don't
believes he
understand it.
threw.
Well, that's true. Yeah. All you did was misrepresent the science and then sort of fit your God in a God of gaps sort of style. Like, oh, well, science can't perfectly explain all of this. Here's a God that explains everything. It explains anything. That doesn't mean it's got anything, any power to explain things behind it. It just means it's a good excuse. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, I think Dinesh is the guy that made the election stolen video. I think that is the guy. Yeah, I like
You get
Pickles
him
too.
going down on his knees and praying for some more quotations from Scripture. Thank you very much.
Oh, 2,000 mules.
Now we have
Yeah.
time for questions. We have 2 microphones down in front. If you have a question for either of our speakers, please come forward and line up. It has been suggested that I start the question period with a question for each of our 2 speakers. That's an opportunity I gladly accept. After I'm done asking questions, I'll field questions from the audience. Please, you're free to indicate.
I don't know. See if I can skip past this.
Explain features of the universe. It's not clear that theism's winning. Take morality of God whence the Holocaust, right? Whence a case where maybe belief in God explains certain features of the universe better than atheistic theories would. But of course, one wonders if the world is superintended by a perfectly good God, whence the Holocaust, right? Whence all manner of horrendous evil and suffering. So all of a sudden, it looks like the appeal to God to explain features of the universe, it's not clear that theism's winning. Take morality too, right? On the one hand, sure, we maybe can understand where moral laws come from if there's a divine lawgiver. On the other hand, Christianity has a doctrine of original sin. Christianity has other things that confound our moral intuitions, right? So again, it's not clear that theism wins.
Well, that's a lot to chew on. Look, the standards that I'm appealing to are, in a way, very intuitive. We have currently a major scientific project to look for life on other planets. Now, truth of it is, if we were to get information that on, let's say, the moon Europa, we found hieroglyphics, some interesting architectural structures, some apparent roving vehicles, this would settle the argument. Right away, we would conclude, as long as we didn't put them there, that there must be some other forms of life that have done that. If someone came along and said molecules of sand assemble themselves into all this, this would be an explanation, but a stupid one, compared to the inference to intelligent design. So, in fact, the scientists say that even if we get radio signals in Morse code, they would be adequate to demonstrate the existence of intelligent life elsewhere. So my point is, let's apply the reasonable standard. If we see a fine-tuned universe, what's more likely? Someone fine-tuned.
Do we though? Can you demonstrate that it is?
Yeah.
I mean, I hear assertions, but I don't see a lot of demonstration.
Yeah. And the whole point is, if we found life on another planet, wouldn't that invalidate the Bible altogether? Like, what would be the point of creating life elsewhere if it was just all about our where's their Jesus?
Yeah, it'd certainly sink Hugh Ross and his ilk, because his whole thing, I mean, he in fairness to him, he is an old Earth creationist. He believes in billions of years and an entire cosmos that isn't just lights on a dome or whatever fucking nonsense. But he very much believes that the fine-tuning is such that Earth is literally the center of the universe.
Right, okay.
And all of it is just to make life possible here. So life anywhere else would completely invalidate his entire theology.
Or it fine-tuned itself. Could the universe have created itself out of nothing? Is there some alternative explanation for the data at hand? No. So I'm simply saying, let's go with the best explanation.
Wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. I mean, we've talked about the nothing thing before, but that notwithstanding, we don't know that the universe could or couldn't.
Right.
Maybe it could. We don't know. So to say, no, it could not, is claiming knowledge you cannot have.
Yeah. Absolutely. And he doesn't have that knowledge. It's simply an assertion he is making that this is the universe has been finely tuned, and not just for anything, but for us in particular. Ugh.
Isn't eternal. If 20 years from now you had a scientific argument that was better, that said, hey, we figured it all out, I would go with that. I would have to drop this argument. I'm saying that in the
No,
current
he would not.
He would not drop that argument. We have been through this before. And so what if he drops this argument? He'll just move on to another argument. Like, this is the thing. Theists never admit when they've had an argument that has failed. You know, the watchmaker is one they generally don't use anymore. They don't admit that, hey, it was a terrible argument and, you know, forget about it. Wow.
And thinking this is a successful explanation. You can't change the subject and say, well, now explain the Holocaust. That requires a different set of rebuttals. I would say the Holocaust is a product of free will. God didn't do the Holocaust, Hitler did. The Nazis did. To try to deflect blame to God for human action voluntarily undertaken.
God allowed it.
For evil. But whether or not that argument works, it has nothing to do.
And it's not even out of character for God. I mean, Dinesh's own holy book shows several occasions where God either committed or commanded genocides. So it's not like it's the sort of thing that God would be like, no, you really shouldn't wipe that entire group of people from the face of the earth, because that's exactly what Yahweh himself does often.
Yeah. And yeah, it's like people that say they've solved the problem of evil, I always have to laugh because they never have. This whole idea that God's omnibenevolent, but, you know, covers us in volcanoes. Just because. Where's the free will in that, Dinesh? Like, what free will, you know, applies to being infected with you know, some sort of super virus, or having your house collapse in an earthquake? Where's the free will in that? You know, because no person did that. That must have been God. Unless Satan somehow has earthquake powers these days.
With the design argument. And finally, morality, very briefly. Again, if evolution could adequately account for morality, let's remember that the atheist premise is that we are evolved creatures in the world, and that's it. So evolution has to do a lot of work. It has to explain the human desire to give blood to strangers. If it can't do that, then it
can do that.
And it can. It's super easy.
Yeah.
Barely an inconvenience.
Yeah. Reciprocity. That basically covers all of it. Empathy and reciprocity are the two things that you need to know. One, you can imagine yourself as that person needing blood, and therefore you are compelled to help them. Two, if you want to live in a society where you get blood, then you've got to give your blood to others. That's it. That's all you need. There's nothing else you need. Jeez, it's like, yeah, he just the amount of theists talking about evolution when they don't understand evolution in the slightest, because he's imagining it as, well, everything should be in competition, including all humans. No, wait a second. That's not true. We have groups that we organize ourselves into, social animals, and those groups compete against other groups. And I wish humankind would just be an entire group by itself, and we seem to be working towards that. But you know, that's what allowed us to survive. He doesn't understand evolution. He thinks, if evolution's true, everyone should just be killing each other. No, that's not what it says at all. Tell me you don't understand evolution without saying, I don't understand evolution.
Well, I mean, learning about things is hard, and it's much more productive for him as a debater to just set up this nice little straw man that he can just push over.
Yeah. Kind of a bit slimy.
Fails as an adequate explanation for a very important form of human behavior, morality, that is seen in every culture known to man. It requires explanation. I have an alternative explanation, that in human beings there are two parts. We are evolutionary creatures in the world. That explains why we desire sex and we desire food to survive, to reproduce. But then I have this other thing inside of me, what Adam Smith calls the impartial spectrum.
Is it a dildo? It's a dildo, isn't it?
He has a dildo inside himself.
Well, when Jesus comes in, Jesus really comes in you.
Oh boy.
That's another voice. And it's in me, but it's not of me. In fact, it's often stopping me from doing what I want to do. It's blocking my self-interest. Where does that come from?
You mean your conscious? Your conscious.
See, I'm over here going
Conscience?
Freud. I'm like, do you mean
Yeah.
the super ego?
Yeah. Like,
Like,
well, the thing is, you have sort of multiple people within yourselves. It's kind of weird the way the human mind works, that a part of you is still yourself at about sort of 5, 6 kind of thing, the vulnerable child and the happy child and the critical parent that sort of says, oh, you're a dumbass kind of thing, right? We all have this voice that says, hey, you're an idiot, for doing this thing, or it speaks like that to you. We all have these different facets of our personality. That's not unusual. And we have a facet called the healthy adult that says, hey, you better not do that. And it's like what we give name to our conscience. But really it's sort of the healthy, logical adult part of you that is contemplating these things. And that's just how the brain works. There's always, and take my chat, for instance, there's always like the young person that acts like an idiot. And, that's how we get my chat.
yeah, gotta
I'm not
gotta
taking that
develop
bad.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and enjoy that. Like, that's the thing. Like, when you have those times of levity that you're being childish and silly, you should enjoy it. Like, there's nothing more fantastic about becoming that child again. That's perfectly healthy and it's perfectly normal, and it's great. One of the worst things that religion ever said was kind of, when I was an adult, I put away childish things. It's like, why can't you enjoy that inner child and sort of enjoy being that youthful sort of silly laughter and silly things, because it's a part of you and always will be, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, well, that's part of the indoctrination is now
Yeah,
you're an adult, you need to live a dreary, miserable life so that you're eager to die and experience heaven.
yeah.
And so you'll believe in the religion even more, yada, yada, yada. But you remind me of something that a performer at a Renaissance festival once told me.
Okay.
I was going through a very, very bad time, and for
I'm
some
sorry to hear
reason,
that.
circumstances just lined up just right. Um,
Mhm.
I happened to be talking to him, and I was like, "My dude, how are you so cheerful all the time?" And
Mm.
and he gave me a really long story. It was basically the opposite version of that scene from Avengers where Bruce Banner says, "My secret is I'm always angry." He's
Yeah.
always sad, and he's like trying to force himself to live in the moment, to
Oh,
appreciate
wow.
life for
Yeah.
what it is. He yeah, it was a really interesting take on things. He says
Mm.
people forget about the childlike wonder. Like when they grow up,
Right,
they
right.
outgrow the wrong parts. They keep the I'm
Mm.
going to throw a tantrum and get my way part, and they
Right.
discard the wonder part, and they should do it the other way around, because if you keep
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
sense of wonder, then you can change the way you feel about things, even if you're feeling like really lonely or homesick, or
Mm.
like things just aren't ever going to get better. You can still look around and say, look at this beautiful blue sky, look at this wonderful tree.
Yeah.
Not to be all look at the trees, but really exist in the moment and find a way to be grateful for what good there is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it
and
was a huge game changer for me. And I'm so
yeah, and
grateful I
these
got to talk to him about that.
these childish things that we say, walk barefoot on the grass, be the child that sort of goes, oh, it feels so awesome to walk around barefoot on the grass, or enjoy the sun kind of thing. There are all these childish things that um but I loved, I think it was Mark Twain that had a response for that. Of course, Mark Twain was a fantastic atheist, and sort of said, when I was a child, I thought of a child and played with childish things. When I became an adult, I put away my childish things, including the expectation to be an adult and the fear of what people would think of me for behaving childishly. And I thought that was so. I mean, it's Mark Twain. He was amazing for his time. Sort of the whole idea that you should not worry about people thinking you're a child because you're enjoying something childish, and it is that enjoyment that you're talking about that you should enjoy and sort of tap into. So yeah. Oh yeah, what I agree. No, even if you are depressed, it will not go on forever. It will end, even though it doesn't feel like it. Everything changes. The only thing you can rely on to be the same is that things change. That's the only thing. And
Yeah,
I agree. What
I very much agree with the second part. One of the when I was at some of my lowest points, I found that just randomly doing a nice thing for someone else, making someone else happy because I couldn't be happy, actually made it suck less. You know, it was like, hey, at least I'm making a difference in the world, even if my life is pretty terrible. You know, so yeah, it helps a lot to do things for others. At least for me, and I guess for what also, your results may vary.
yeah.
How does evolution account for that? So I'm saying that the God hypothesis casts more light on that subject, the hypothesis of a moral lawgiver. In fact, even the hypothesis of a life to come. You may say a final court in which our moral deeds will be adjudicated. Explains why we act the way we do now. Otherwise, our own behavior is incomprehensible to us. That's the strength of the presuppositional argument.
He's got it backwards.
Yeah.
Our behavior is entirely comprehensible to us. That's
Mhm.
literally what psychology is, the study of human
Yes.
behavior. But if you assume there's an external judge and everyone knows about it, then our behavior becomes incomprehensible because no one
Yeah.
acts in accord with that supposed truth.
Yeah.
Question for you. I'll stand up for your question, and I'll see if I can do both. But I know people are impatient to get to the next segment. Bring it on.
My question for you is very quick. Your argument seems to rest on the idea that religion is an explanatory enterprise and that the warrant for believing the doctrines of a particular religion comes from their explanatory value. Why would you think that?
Well, because of religion's own very large claims. And because it's something I didn't have time to go into, because not all these religions can be simultaneously true. I mean, there are enormous numbers of competing religions. It's another reason that it's obvious to me that they're man-made. It's what you would expect if it was man-made. There'd be lots of religions with incompatible claims and theologies, and that this would lead to further quarreling. Either one of them is completely true, as the Roman Church used to say, it was the one true church. Some of its members still do, or all of them are false, or all of them are true, which of course can't be true. Now to Dinesh. And the matter of anomalies and the question of ex nihilo. Half the time when I debate, it's people saying, nothing can come from nothing, you can't get something from nothing, so since there is something, someone must have wanted there to be something. Not, I think, a very impressive syllogism. I can't do it all this evening, but it's very easy for anyone to go and see Professor Lawrence Krauss deliver his brilliant lecture online called The Whole Universe from Nothing, which explains to you how indeed you can get very large numbers of things from nothing with the proper understanding of quantum theory. And then tonight Dinesh says, really there was nothing, and the Hebrews were so clever that they knew that. And therefore they must have been right about God as well. This is ridiculous. The ancient Hebrews also thought that God made man and women out of nothing or out of dust and clay, whereas we have an exact knowledge, or increasingly exact knowledge, of precisely the genetic materials in common with other creatures from which we were assembled. And then not content with that, he says biblical prophecy is true in respect of Palestine. This is an extraordinary thing, and you were right to mention the Holocaust. If it's true that God wanted the Jews to get back to Palestine, then it must have been true that he wanted their exile to be ended. The galut, as it's known to Zionism, the exile, the wandering. And we know how that wandering was ended. By Christian Europe throwing living Jewish babies into furnaces. Well, that must be part of the plan then, mustn't it? And some rabbis used to claim that, by the way. They used to claim that the Holocaust was a punishment for exile. And then people started to desert the synagogue. So they shut up about it until the 67 war. And then when the Israeli army got the Wailing Wall back, they said, we shouldn't have spoken so quickly. Actually, this was what God always had in mind, the conquest by Jews of the Palestinians. Well, you see how brilliantly that's worked out. I don't think it's wise or moral or decent to try and detect the finger of God in human quarrels. I think the enterprise is futile, and it incidentally shows the absurdity of all arguments from design.
Yeah, I think the sort of weapons given to the Israelites by America had a lot more to do with them winning than sort of God reaching down and giving any kind of influence. Like they had a lot of help from other countries to retake Jerusalem, mostly Western Christian countries.
It certainly helps when you have a bigger military than every nation around you combined, and also access to nuclear weapons, and your enemies know that.
Helps, doesn't it?
Yeah. Although I think Hitch may have slightly dodged the question. Maybe he didn't intend to and just off-tracked himself, but he started out with religions don't have good explanatory power, they don't have the warrant for it. And then he kind of skewed off into pointing God did this in human affairs doesn't make sense, which
Yeah.
it's well off track, it seems to me.
Thank you.
Did you want to hang around for the question time? I mean, we did those 2 questions there from the moderator. They're doing audience questions now. Usually not much happens in the audience sort of questions. So I'm happy to wrap it up if you are.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
Occasionally there's a banger in there, but
yeah.
It's hard to say for sure. Usually we know about it in advance because people make endless cuts and shorts and memes out of those,
Mhm.
but I haven't seen any from this particular debate. But on the other hand, because it's so quiet, maybe nobody had been able to hear them.
Maybe. I can't believe how quiet it was. I put it up to like 160% sound as well when I redid it just then. It's crazy low. I don't know why. I don't know why that is. I do apologize, everybody. I have no idea why that is. But yeah. So what did you think?
Not a lot got resolved. I mean, Hitch,
Hmm.
as usual, was a pleasure to listen to, but
Yeah.
Dinesh wasn't really giving him much to work with. Dinesh
Right.
didn't really make an argument. He just declared
Hmm.
that he'd already won, basically, and then
Yeah.
proceeded to demonstrate how wrong he was
Yeah. And sort of so
about
his entire
everything.
argument was, well, we've got 2 assumptions, or we've got 2 hypotheses or 2 presuppositions, I suppose you could say, but they're more like hypotheses that it was a naturalistic explanation and a supernaturalistic explanation, like a God explanation. But the naturalistic people are saying that they don't know how it occurred, and I'm saying that God did it, so I win. No, that's not how that works. If I said, "Hey, it was a magical elephant," it doesn't mean I suddenly get equal amounts of winning with you. Just because you give an explanation doesn't mean that it's correct. Oh, nice. Wow, that was fast, Ember. You're getting fast with those, mate. Like, I gotta say,
I have a
I'm
few
very,
ready to go. This one is
very admirable,
actually
man. Like, really, that's some good work.
I have this one
Let's
labeled
talk
as
about the
elephant in the room.
elephant in the room. Like,
Exactly. It was a bit of a joke. I was on a stream with Stephanie, and Stephanie pulls out her elephant and says, it's time
yeah.
for the elephant in the room." And so I was like, huh. So I grabbed that guy and I said, in case Stephanie happens to not be around, like
Mhm.
right now. But yeah, here's proof that Mark is exactly as correct as Dinesh.
Right, I made a
So
prophecy.
yeah, now how do we determine who's right? If only there were a way we could compare these things.
Mm.
But,
Yeah,
then we
absolutely.
run into the Ken Ham problem. Were you there?
How do you know we're there? Oh, the ham sandwich. You know what? I think that's still, let me check. I think that's still, yeah, it's still under copyright in dispute. Still.
Ugh,
I know,
them,
right? They're
them
just doing it.
bastages.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't worry me that much because I've got a funny feeling they're just sort of making it difficult for me. They've got no, like, they're not really going to contest it because how could they? But they're just making it difficult because I reviewed their stuff. So, to be honest with you, I think they're trying to discourage me from reviewing their stuff. Like, they probably do it to everybody. I don't think I'm special or anything. They probably just do it to everybody. So they go, well, if they're a YouTuber that's sort of, trying to do reviews to make money, then let's make it difficult. I don't care. I don't give a shit. I actually feel like going to their stuff now specifically and picking on them because they've made a fake DMCA claim. I really do feel like I'm going to focus on them now, just out of spite. Nothing but spite. No, not spite. It's just if they don't want me
Justice.
to look at their, well, if they don't want me to look at their stuff and are sort of using these really underhanded ways to stop me, doesn't that mean I should go and look at their stuff because they don't want me to? Like, why is it they're putting it on YouTube if they don't want people to look at it? Why is that? Do they just don't want the criticism? And if they don't want the criticism, then maybe it's right for me to go and criticize it. So I might start sort of going through their stuff a bit more. So, if Ken Ham's out there and listening, It didn't work, mate. You've only made it worse for yourself. You've only made it 100 times worse for yourself. Because now I'm going, well, why don't you want me looking at your stuff? I want to see if he's made any prophecies or anything. That's what I want to see. That's kind of my thing at the moment. I want to see prophecies and, end of time stuff. Is anybody declaring end of times? Because I've heard a lot of statements on it, but nobody giving exact dates and times and stuff.
A few people have. They were all wrong. Some of them turned into cults, like Jehovah's Witnesses. That was originally an end of the world.
Yeah.
It was actually several end of the world prophecies that all failed.
Right.
But oh goodness, yeah, there's quite a lot of that. But I think the New Testament scholars are pretty much universal that according to the Bible, the world would end sometime around the year 70, possibly as far as 100.
Yeah, and that's why in the Bible it's got them sort of at the end of the world they're fighting with swords and shields. That's why.
Against the Romans, led by Nero.
Right.
Right.
So,
is Nero coming back? Because otherwise this shit's way out of date.
Yeah, well, even if you sort of give a very loose interpretation of that, they're still fighting with swords and shields, and they're still the nations that Israel was sort of warring with at that time, kind of thing. So they're rivals around the area. Dunning-Prager, so PragerU is one of the scariest things I see out of the US. It is horrifying. And the fact that Florida has approved it for use in their curriculum is
and
absolutely
Texas and
horrifying.
Oklahoma.
Really, all of those. Holy crap. Man, Aaron must be livid.
Oh, very, very much. Yeah. It's starting a bit of a civil war within the school districts. Like in Oklahoma, for example, Broken Arrow and Tulsa are refusing to use PragerU material, and the state is saying, no, you have to. And there may be other cities, I don't know. But yeah, they're going to have a big old fight over it because PragerU isn't just an alternative to the left-leaning mainstream. They are openly a propaganda, non-educational institution.
Right.
They
have no
do not hide the fact. Yeah, they don't hide it. It's right on their site. We are a right-wing propaganda producer. It is a fact. It's an admitted fact. And these states are like, oh yeah, they have you in the name. It's fine. No,
and they're a university.
You can't do that.
No. They call themselves a university, but they're not accredited. They're not an actual university. It would be like me starting a channel called Atheist University and then running around claiming I'm a university. No, they're not. They're not.
I think my prophecy is that it's going to end in a lawsuit. Insofar as that, because PragerU isn't just right wing, which is bad enough, like promoting one political side specifically by alleging that actual science has a left wing bias, whatever. But they're also openly religious. They're constantly on and on about Judeo-Christian values. And the only reason they say that is because Prager himself is a Jew, but his entire cast of characters is Christian. Including Stephen Meyer, the head of the Discovery Institute, who openly admits his goal is to get science out of the curriculum and eventually establish a theocracy in the United States. He is a literal admitted traitor to the United States. He's part of PragerU, super patriotic. That's fun. But yeah, the whole point is just have religion down people's throats. It's right out there.
He's not a traitor to the United States. It's just if the United States technically could become a theocracy if democratically done, right? That's technically possible.
You'd have to repeal the First Amendment, and well,
that can be done.
It's true. There are a number of Republicans calling for a new constitutional convention, just scrapping the entire Constitution and starting over. I suppose it could be done.
So there's a number of things in your Constitution I disagree with, but I think that as a document, it is one of the most amazing documents ever produced. in its understanding of its limitations as well as its strengths and what it establishes. There is no doubt that the American Constitution is one of the greatest documents ever written. You should see our Constitution. Have you ever read the Australian Constitution?
I have not.
It's bad. It's really bad. Do you know who's head of the armies in the Australian Constitution?
Head King of England. I was going to
Yeah.
say Queen because it's been Queen for so damn long. But yeah,
Yeah, it's been Queen for so long, but still, it's an archaic document that has things in it. And I can't remember which comedian it was. An Australian comedian said, "Yeah, we've got a constitution. We haven't read it. We'll refer to it if there's problems, but for now, it's fine." Like, and yeah, it's kind of this document which has it doesn't mention the prime minister, right? So our head of the government, the prime minister's not in it, which is crazy, right? That is crazy. And all of the ministers, like, so we have so the ministers are our politicians and our parliamentarians who are responsible in the government for certain things. So they have a portfolio that might be health, minister for health, minister for sort of defense, minister for, I presume you would have much the same thing, I would imagine.
Sort of. Most of that stuff, constitutionally speaking, it's just the executive branch's problems. By tradition, not law, just pure tradition, the president appoints a cabinet and says, okay, you're in charge of the military, and you're in charge of health and human safety, and you're in charge of border security, and etc.
But those people don't have to be elected representatives, do they?
Correct.
Okay, so the difference in Australia is that cabinet or their cabinet have to be elected representatives. So they have to be people who have won a seat and are in parliament. So if you'd imagine that the executive made up of people that are in legislature that have a seat in the House of Representatives.
Well, that's one area where you're one up on us.
Well, because
like
Trump
at
could just
least
appoint some random idiot to the cabinet kind of thing.
You would think not, and yet.
Right. Well,
in fact,
I mean,
that's been a problem since the days of Andrew Jackson. He famously had his kitchen cabinet because his official cabinet, the jobs that actually had pay and stipends and shit, he gave to all his drinking buddies. So like the minister or the secretary of war was Joe from the ranch, and then he had his kitchen cabinet, which were like actual experts who could advise him on shit, but they had no authority at all because they didn't hold the actual posts that were in charge of anything.
Yeah. So our sort of constitution's lagging behind, but we have a saying over here that convention is stronger than law. That how we do things is stronger than the law binding them. So it's a very interesting situation where everybody knows what it is.
Yeah, it's almost a British common law thing. Like there's the written law, and then there's common law, and if there's enough precedent on the common law, it wins.
Yeah, basically. So a while ago there was a situation where the Governor General, the Queen's representative in Australia, fired the Prime Minister. And the next prime minister made the statement like, "God save the Queen," because nothing will save the Governor General. Like he was dead man walking. He was a dead man walking. Like he was up, and he knew it too. Like it was a whole debacle. But yeah, that's sort of where we're at. So I kind of push for a new constitution, but I'd like something like America, because the rights in the Australian one are freedom of religion and the right for some compensation over property. And that's it. There's no right to free speech in the Australian Constitution. There's no other rights whatsoever in the Australian Constitution. It's crap. It's really crap, and it needs updating, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, as we found out recently with the overturn of Roe versus Wade, you can't just assume everyone understands a thing as a right. It has to be expressly spelled out.
Codified, yeah, absolutely. No, I get you. It's just, yeah. Is there a comparison in Australia to our non-elected Supreme Court judges? Yeah, so we do have a high court. So Supreme Courts are for the state. So this is where it gets complicated. So we have like a Western Australian Supreme Court. That's not the entire countries. The entire countries is called the High Court, and that's the one that's the like the Supreme Court. I believe they are appointed by the government of the day, I think. So I think there is something like it, and no, they're appointed by the Governor General, right? So they're basically appointed by the Queen's representative out of the legal system. So I've got problems with that. But there was one point where there was a guy called Cardinal Pell, right, and he was found guilty of child molestation by the courts and by a jury. He was found guilty. The Pope's accountant, by the way, great. And he basically appealed to the High Court, and the High Court overturned the decision, which is like, how can you possibly overturn a jury decision? And they did. So I've got issues with the way that they operate and the power that they've been given. I think it's wrong that you overturn a jury decision with the High Court. So there's a lot of things that are done that are legacies of the monarchy, sort of thing, right? So a lot of things that are sort of that the monarchy, because the monarchy did it, we still do it today, and I think that should be done away with. Way less than in England. In England, it's absolutely like you have the sort of scars of monarchy all over it. But I think that we could stand to move away a bit. I'm not advocating for moving out of the Commonwealth, just that we change our constitution to reflect the actual reality of the country, and that we give no power to the monarchy whatsoever. It shouldn't be there.
Yeah, it's pretty trippy. Our courts also are somewhat of a mess. Each individual state has its own Supreme Court,
right?
But it's not the highest court in the state. There's Supreme Court and then Superior Court, but at the federal level, it's Superior Court and then Supreme Court.
Okay, just to make things very confusing.
Yes.
It's all a
way
ploy,
more
so
fun.
lawyers say that you need them. They just make it confusing. It's a conspiracy for the day.
Clearly.
So, and I heard that like a Supreme Court, like in the federal Supreme Court, a guy had been like taking bribes and using money to send people places and like just being an ass. Like, how does that even happen? You know, like it's crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot that doesn't make any damn sense.
Yeah. Has Grayson asks, this has turned into a Q&A, by the way. Has your family been in Australia a long time? Yes. Yes. My mother was the first, my mother's ancestry, so her great-great-great-great-great-grandmother was the first child born in Victoria over east. So one of the first child born in that state from outside. So yes, my family has been here since colonization, essentially. And yes, my family, most of them, or almost all of them, came here as convicts. We were imprisoned and sent over here because England didn't want us anymore. And who can blame them? I mean, really, let's face it, we're nothing but trouble. Nothing but trouble. My family came from mostly north of England towards Scotland. That's reed means red hair in Scottish, in sort of Celtic.
I never would have
Pictish.
guessed.
Well, I don't make my hair color very, very public, just
Indeed.
for personal reasons. But apparently we were rat catchers back in England. My family was rat catchers. We used to have terriers that used to catch the rats. but my family apparently, like my family has like investigated all of this stuff because it's just such a fascinating story, that they used to have a side hustle where they had a pit with their terriers, and they used to throw rats in and then take bets on how many rats each terrier would. So they ran like a gambling thing on the side illegally, kind of thing, and were
Oh.
apparently a massive nuisance for the entire town. Apparently, like they were just notorious as being just troublemakers everywhere.
Well, that checks out.
Yeah, it checks out. The judge in sentencing them said they are a rowdy bunch that like to drink and fight. You know, that's basically how we were summed up. But yeah, apparently a sheep was stolen, so rustled or whatever. My family denied that they did it, but the head of the sheep was on a stake in their front yard for anybody to see. So what happened was that they somebody saw it. They all got arrested. The entire family got arrested because it was in their yard. They claimed innocence, but the court system was like, off to Australia with you. And then the Crown seized the land. So from what the sort of historians saw was that they had all of these lower class people, but they still owned the land that they were on, and they were nuisances. A lot of them were framed in order to get them off the land, convicted, sent away, and then the Crown could take the land as recompense for the crime.
It's quite a racket.
Well, some people stole to be sent to the colonies. Their life was so hard in England, they thought life in Australia would be easier, so they would steal and then like draw attention to themselves, kind of thing. Like
That checks out. There's people in the US who do that now. They'll commit crimes in order to get a heated place to sleep and food.
Yep. Yeah. And so there's reports of people stealing somebody and then yelling "stop thief" kind of thing, to draw attention to themselves. So to get sent over, which they got to Australia, and a lot of them died because they were convicts that were essentially worked to death for to build the colonies. So it wasn't the paradise they were expecting. It was a hard place to live.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the story of my family. And so, we like to fight and like to argue and like to, stuff. Not much has changed. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening. I feel like, I mean, not many people know that. That's the story of my family and how we got here. So, yeah. By now they all died, yes. And I know my family was very involved in the Eureka Stockade, which was it was a rebellion over rum and other stuff, like being worked, or workers' rebellion. So
okay. Yeah, all important things. Unionization and also rum.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and Australia's a funny place, but thanks for listening, everyone. So what have you got coming up, Ember? What have you got on the cards? Because I know you always have stuff coming up.
Oh yes, goodness. Less than I have in the past because we're stupid job stuff is taking up too much of my damn time. But tomorrow I've got Jay Bundy, Pocket Locker 86 is going to stop by for an Atheist Lives. And of course, I'll be on Aaron's at 6 Eastern for reading Joseph Smith. And then Jay will be after that. And then, of course, Maya's Bad Science Sunday is after that.
Yep.
Which I always mention just because it's a freaking amazing show.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I might grab that while you talk.
Yeah.
You're okay?
Things
grab
like I said, I'm still working on that cough.
From Kato, get some water.
Oh yeah, I'm getting down there on my bottle.
All right.
But yeah, I'm prepping another live show. I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be. But Tuesday evening, Blasphemers Bible over at Aaron's. Let's see. I've got some like normal video content coming up. 2 things next week. I'm just not sure which days. I've been scheduling so much stuff in advance. I don't even know what's coming out when. But 2 regular videos next week. And also, I think I did manage to have time for somebody mentioned at some point, got it into my head that somebody should do a reading of the Epic of Gilgamesh, like the actual epic, not a
Ooh.
summary, not Cliff's Notes. So I
Do you mean
prevailed
the
on the
actual
Archangel,
Atrahasa or the Epic of Gilgamesh sort of thing?
the translated tablet. So it will be in English.
Okay.
Because
The Epic Gilgamesh. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So tablet 1 will come out sometime this week, possibly Monday. I don't fucking know when I set it for.
Okay.
But yeah. So a bunch of good things. And then of course there's same bat time, but other bat channel. Mark and I will be at it again over at my place next time.
Yeah.
Because we go back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. And I might mix it up. You know, I saw a couple of people saying they're so sick of debates kind of thing. And I get you. I get you. Hell, sometimes I get sick of debates, honestly. I love debate. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, I can't. You know, after that entire Ross thing, I was like, oh, do I really even want to debate again? It's just sometimes so bad.
Yeah.
But, you
Your
know,
energy can get
yeah.
depleted.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Kind of got to refill the tank kind of thing. I get you. I get you. But yeah, apart from that, I don't have much. I will try to put up some more stuff, some room rumbles and stuff. See if I can do that. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I should get more people on to interview. I always enjoy interviews. I've never interviewed you. You realize that, don't you, Ember?
That's true. I was actually thinking the other day, I haven't had
Yeah.
you on for an Atheist Lives. Like, I'm constantly like,
You
well, not
did.
constantly. I don't put that much effort into, but
No,
I try to keep
I get you.
more
Yeah,
interviews
yeah.
coming. But yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
like, I've never had Mark on. Huh.
I thought you did. I have done a few interviews, so I may be mixing it up with something else. Like I know I did Neil the 404's room, and I did Captive Desk, which was he's great. So yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's
You'd
just
have to
every
check
time
the
it
record
pops
on
in
that
my
one.
head, I think that we do
Okay.
these debate reviews, and then also occasionally we find ourselves on the same project anyway. It
Yeah, that's
just
true.
kind of, it feels like it's asking too much to be like, let's do another show, you know?
Well,
Yeah,
let's talk about it. Yeah, let's
yeah.
see.
At some
Yeah.
point we should interview each other. It'd be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, no worries at all. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I really appreciate it. And you know, I do talk bad about chat, but you're wonderful people. And yeah, that's you, Dave. That's you. That is you. Yeah. And no, it was a good interview. I really liked it. Now I've done a few interviews. I have trouble remembering where I've been and where I haven't. I certainly won't forget yours though. But thank you so much, everybody. And I know I talk bad about chat. I love you all, even people that disagree, and even people that sort of say weird stuff. You know, I'm looking at you, Doorknob Head. I'm looking in your direction, mate. No, I love Doorknob. He's so funny. And yeah, as so good to see you, everybody. So good to see you, and so good to be here. Do take care. Do be kind to yourself, and be kind to each other, because really, yourself and each other is all we really have. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. And thank you, Ember. Thank you for coming. I really, you know, as slimy as I find D'Souza, it's always good to see him get slapped down. I really,
Oh, yes.
I really dislike his arguments. I mean, I don't know what he's like as a person, but his arguments are so, they're just, I don't know. There's something about them that just doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, a lot of those are just, I get what you mean about the sliminess, because like
Yeah.
Craig comes off as deceptive, but still like a clean folded document, whereas D'Souza is just like, I don't know, like dripping in some
Yeah.
way. I don't know.
I think it's the way that he sort of put things out there and then rushes really past them. He kind of puts this idea out there and then backs it up with really quick talking kind of thing. I don't know. I'm it just
Yeah, it's car salesman sleazy kind of thing.
yeah, like sort of Donnie levels of stuff. You know? Did I say that? It wouldn't have been me. I wouldn't be that unfair. All right, love you all. Thank you so much, and do take care.
Night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.